Anthony Davis's trade demand. In January 2019, Anthony Davis was still under contract with the New Orleans Pelicans, and he asked out anyway. His agent, Rich Paul, made it public that Davis wouldn't sign an extension in New Orleans, which immediately cut the Pelicans' leverage in half. The Pelicans fined Davis $50,000 for the public request, which is actually an NBA rule violation. Then, when New Orleans tried to limit his minutes after the request, the league stepped in and said no, they had to keep playing him. Multiple teams put together trade packages, including the Boston Celtics, but Davis' camp made it clear the Lakers were the preferred destination. That move alone knocked out most of the competition, and the Pelicans had no choice but to take whatever the Lakers offered. The final deal sent Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, 3 first-round picks, and a pick swap to New Orleans. The Lakers also gave up the number 4 overall pick in the 2019 draft. It's one of the largest single-player trade packages in modern NBA history. Davis had already made multiple All-NBA teams and was considered a franchise cornerstone, but he forced his way out before even hitting free agency. That move let him keep his max contract eligibility while still controlling where he landed. He didn't gamble, he engineered the whole thing. And it worked. Davis won the 2020 NBA championship in his very first season with the Lakers, alongside LeBron James. Ray Allen's Miami decision. After the 2011 to 2012 season, Ray Allen was coming off averaging 14.2 points per game and shooting 45.3% from 3 for the Boston Celtics. The Celtics offered him a 2-year, $12 million deal to stay. He turned it down. Then he signed with the Miami Heat for 2 years and $6 million, which was literally half of what Boston offered him. Miami already had LeBron James, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh, and had just reached the 2012 NBA Finals. Allen didn't go there for the money. He went there because Miami gave him the best chance to win. Earlier in his Boston tenure, the Celtics had actually explored trading him in an Arthur James Mayo deal, and they also reduced his role late in his time there by benching him for Avery Bradley. So the relationship wasn't perfect heading into that decision. But still, leaving $12 million on the table is not something most people do. And then in the 2013 finals against San Antonio, Allen hit one of the most famous shots in NBA history, a corner 3 with 5.2 seconds left in Game 6 to tie the series. Miami went on to win the championship. The whole situation shows a player who completely prioritized rings over dollars, and it paid off. Dennis Schroeder's gamble. The Los Angeles Lakers offered Dennis Schroeder a 4-year, $84 million extension during the 2020 to 2021 season, and he said no. At the time, he was averaging 15.4 points and 5.8 assists per game. Those were solid numbers, and the Lakers were a championship organization, but Schroeder wanted somewhere between $100 million and $120 million, so he passed on the guaranteed money and bet on himself in free agency. Then the playoffs happened. He averaged 14.3 points, but went scoreless in Game 5 against the Phoenix Suns. The Lakers lost in the first round. His market value dropped fast. Instead of a max deal, he signed with the Boston Celtics for 1 year and $5.9 million on the mid-level exception. To put that in perspective, he turned down $84 million in guaranteed money and got under $6 million guaranteed the very next season. Schroeder later admitted he would have taken the deal in hindsight, and also said his advisors influenced the decision. It's one of the most straightforward examples on this entire list. He had the money in front of him, locked in, guaranteed, and he passed. The market disagreed with his valuation completely. That's a loss of around $78 million in guaranteed earnings from one decision. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Kyrie's Cleveland exit. Kyrie Irving requested a trade from the Cleveland Cavaliers in July 2017, right after Cleveland reached their 3rd straight NBA Finals. This wasn't a team that was falling apart. The Cavaliers had won the 2016 NBA Championship, where Kyrie hit the go-ahead three-pointer in Game 7. In the 2017 Eastern Conference playoffs, Cleveland went 12-1 before losing to Golden State. Kyrie still had 2 years left on his contract when he asked out. He forced the organization to act before training camp even started. The trade happened on August 22, 2017. Cleveland got Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and an unprotected 2018 Brooklyn Nets first-round pick. Kyrie actually waived a $5.8 million trade kicker to make the deal work faster. Then the return completely fell apart. Isaiah Thomas was dealing with a serious hip injury and only played 15 games for Cleveland before being traded again. Jay Crowder was also moved during that same season. The Nets pick eventually became Colin Sexton at number 8 overall. Then LeBron James left Cleveland for free agency in 2018, and a lot of that instability traces directly back to the Irving situation. Kyrie had publicly stated he wanted a bigger individual role outside of LeBron's structure. He left a finals contender mid-contract, and the organization never fully recovered from it. Scottie Pippen's bench protest. In Game 3 of the 1994 Eastern Conference semifinals against the New York Knicks, the Chicago Bulls had the ball with 1.8 seconds left, and the score tied. Coach Phil Jackson drew up the final play for Tony Kukoc. Scottie Pippen was the best player on that team. Michael Jordan had retired earlier that season, and Pippen had finished third in MVP voting while averaging 22 points, 8.7 rebounds, and 5.6 assists. He'd carried that team to 55 wins. So when Jackson gave Kukoc the ball on the last possession, Pippen refused to go in. He stayed on the bench. Kukoc hit the shot and won the game. The Bulls still won, but that didn't make the situation any less significant. Pippen issued a public apology afterward, and his teammates and coaches came out and criticized the decision directly. What makes this one stand out is the context. This wasn't a regular season game with nothing on the line. It was a tied playoff game with under 2 seconds remaining, and Pippen sat down because he wasn't the primary option on one play. The Bulls were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference that year without Jordan, and Pippen's refusal put personal shot preference over everything else in that moment. Thibs and the Rose injury. In Game 1 of the 2012 first-round playoffs between the Chicago Bulls and the Philadelphia 76ers, the Bulls were leading 99-87 with 1 minute and 22 seconds left. The game was essentially over. Derrick Rose was still on the floor. Rose had won the 2011 MVP award and was the centerpiece of a Bulls team that finished 50-16 during the lockout-shortened season, the best record in the NBA that year. With under 90 seconds left in a decided game, Rose attempted a jump stop and tore the anterior cruciate ligament in his left knee. He missed the entire 2012 to 2013 season. The Bulls lost that series to Philadelphia in 6 games without him. Rose never returned to MVP-level play after that injury. His career trajectory changed permanently, and the Bulls' championship window effectively closed alongside it. Coach Tom Thibs was known for keeping starters in games deep into blowout. This was the direct result of that approach applied to the wrong game at the wrong time. There was no basketball reason to have Rose on the floor in that moment. The lead was 12 points. The clock had barely over a minute left. The franchise player for a title-contending team played in a game that was already decided, and the organization paid for it for years. Sprewell's gamble. In October 2004, the Minnesota Timberwolves offered Latrell Sprewell a 3-year, $21 million extension. Sprewell was making $14.6 million in 2004 to 2005 alone, so the extension averaged roughly $7 million per season, which was a significant pay cut. He turned it down and made his famous public statement saying he had a family to feed. At 34 years old, Sprewell was coming off a season where Minnesota finished 58-24, the best record in franchise history, and reached the Western Conference Finals. He averaged 16.8 points per game that year as the third scorer behind Kevin Garnett and Sam Cassell. But the rejection wasn't just about pride. Sprewell genuinely expected a better offer from the open market. No team gave him one. He played his final season for the Timberwolves with declining numbers, entered free agency, and never signed another NBA deal. His career total earnings were approximately $97 million across his entire career. The $21 million guaranteed was sitting right there, and he walked away from it completely. No contract materialized. No second chance came. He was done. For a player at that age, with that recent production on a playoff team, turning down guaranteed money and getting nothing in return is exactly what makes this one of the cleaner examples on this list. Kevin Durant's decision. In July 2016, Kevin Durant became an unrestricted free agent for the first time in his career. The Oklahoma City Thunder had gone 55-27 that season and led the Golden State Warriors 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals before losing in 7 games. Durant had meetings with 6 teams: the Thunder, Warriors, Spurs, Celtics, Heat, and Clippers. He signed with the Warriors on a 2-year, $54.3 million contract with the player option. Golden State had just finished a 73-9 regular season, the best in NBA history. They already had Steph Curry, who who had won 2 MVPs, Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. The only reason the roster could absorb Durant was a television deal that caused the salary cap to jump from $70 million to $94 million, which opened up enough space to sign a max player without gutting the core. Durant left a contender to join the very team that eliminated him. In the 2017 playoffs, the Warriors went 16-1, the best postseason record in NBA history. Durant won Finals MVP and averaged 35.2 points in the finals. The move worked completely on a competitive level, but the decision itself made a historically dominant team essentially unbeatable and effectively ended the league's competitive balance for 2 seasons. Karl Malone's last shot. In 2003, Karl Malone became a free agent after 18 seasons with the Utah Jazz. He'd won 2 MVP awards and made multiple finals appearances, but he never won a championship. His salary with Utah the prior season was approximately $19 million. He signed with the Los Angeles Lakers for approximately $1.5 million, a minimum level deal. That's a pay cut of roughly $17 to $18 million in a single offseason. The Lakers already had Shaq, Kobe Bryant, and Gary Payton, making it one of the earliest modern super teams in NBA history. Malone was open about his reason. He wanted a championship. The Lakers reached the 2004 finals. They lost to the Detroit Pistons in 5 games. Malone played through a knee injury during the finals and wasn't fully effective when it mattered most. He retired that offseason without a ring. The championship didn't come. The money was already gone. Malone gave up nearly all of his earning power for one last shot at the title and came up short. It's a different kind of greed than most on this list. It wasn't about money or leverage over an organization. It was pure competitive greed, sacrificing everything financially to chase the one thing that had been missing from an otherwise complete career. James Harden's 3 exits. Between January 2021 and 2023, James Harden requested trades from 3 separate NBA teams. That's 3 franchises in roughly 2.5 years. He'd been with the Houston Rockets for over 8 seasons, winning the 2018 MVP and 3 straight scoring titles. From 2018 to 2020, he signed a 4-year, $171 million extension in 2017 that was still active. Then he showed up to the 2020 to 2021 camp out of shape, reported late, and publicly said the team wasn't good enough. Houston traded him to Brooklyn in January 2021 in a 4-team deal that sent multiple unprotected first-round picks and pick swaps to the Rockets, less than 13 months after arriving in Brooklyn, where he was playing alongside Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Harden forced another trade to Philadelphia. The Nets got Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. Then in 2023, Harden opted into his contract with Philadelphia, expecting a trade, publicly called team executive Daryl Morey a liar over contract expectations, and requested a 3rd trade. Each time, Harden was on a contending team under an active contract. Each organization had to restructure quickly and give up real assets under pressure to move him. 3 teams, 3 forced exits, the same leverage applied repeatedly. The Nets, age and gamble. In June 2013, the Brooklyn Nets traded for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry from the Boston Celtics. Garnett and Pierce were both 35 years old or older at the time. Garnett had to waive a no-trade clause to make the deal happen. Brooklyn gave up Gerald Wallace, Chris Humphries, multiple other players, 3 unprotected first-round picks in 2014, 2016, and 2018, along with a 2017 pick swap. The Nets were chasing an immediate championship under aggressive ownership. The results were not close to the goal. Brooklyn won 44 games in 2013 to 2014 and lost in the second round. Pierce left after just 1 season. Garnett was traded away in 2015. The draft picks the Nets gave up became Jaylen Brown in 2016 and contributed to Boston acquiring Jason Tatum through the swap. The Celtics used those assets to build one of the most successful rebuilds in modern NBA history. Meanwhile, Brooklyn finished 28-54 in 2017 to 2018 with no draft capital to rebuild. The organization traded 3 unprotected first-round picks and multiple players for 2 veterans who were past their prime and a window that lasted barely 1 season. Mavs let Brunson walk. Jalen Brunson was drafted 33rd overall by the Dallas Mavericks in 2018. He spent his early years as a backup guard and developed into a legitimate starter by 2021 to 2022. That playoff run was the clearest signal. With Luka injured early in the first round against Utah, Brunson stepped up and scored 41 points in Game 2 while shooting 51.5% from the field across the entire playoffs. The Mavericks had reportedly been offered the chance to extend Brunson earlier for approximately 4 years and $55 million. They passed. Brunson hit free agency in 2022 and signed with the New York Knicks for 4 years and $104 million. Dallas received nothing in return. The Mavericks lost their primary secondary ball handler at no compensation because they declined to commit before his value peaked. Brunson immediately became the focal point of New York's offense and developed into an all-star level player with the Knicks. Dallas was left leaning entirely on Luka with no reliable second option, which forced roster restructuring and additional moves the following offseason. The organization had a clear opportunity to lock in a proven playoff performer on a team-friendly deal and chose not to. Brunson walked out the door for nothing. Charles Barkley's trade request. Charles Barkley spent 8 seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers from 1984 through 1992. By his final season, he was averaging 23.1 points and 11.1 rebounds and had made 7 straight All-NBA teams. But the Sixers went 35-47 that year and missed the playoffs entirely. Barkley was unhappy with the direction of the roster and made that clear. Multiple teams were involved in trade discussions, including the Los Angeles Lakers and Portland Trail Blazers. Reports at the time described him as disgruntled, and he reportedly had a preference for Portland before the deal fell apart. On June 17, 1992, the Sixers traded him to the Phoenix Suns for Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. No draft picks changed hands. For a player who had made 7 consecutive All-NBA teams and was still in his prime, that return was well below market value. Philadelphia essentially had no leverage once the situation became public, so they moved him for whatever they could get. In his very first season with Phoenix, Barkley won the 1993 MVP award and led the Suns to the NBA Finals. The Sixers entered a full rebuild after trading away one of the best players in the league at the peak of his career for 3 role players and 0 future assets, Ben Simmons' holdout. In 2019, Ben Simmons signed a 5-year, $170 million max extension with the Philadelphia 76ers. By the time he requested a trade in August 2021, he still had 4 years and approximately $147 million remaining on that contract. The situation started after the 2021 playoff loss to Atlanta, where Simmons was publicly criticized by both coach Doc Rivers and teammate Joel Embiid. Simmons declared he wouldn't report to training camp and refused to participate fully in team activities. He missed the entire preseason and repeated that into the regular season. The Sixers began withholding his salary at approximately $360,000 per missed game, and by the end of 2021, over $10 million had been withheld. By the time the situation was fully resolved, total fines exceeded $19 million, making him the most fined player in NBA history based on available reporting. Simmons also cited mental health reasons for his refusal to play and filed a grievance to recover withheld salary. He was eventually traded to the Brooklyn Nets in February 2022 as part of the James Harden deal. He didn't play a single game for Philadelphia during the 2021 to 2022 season. He was under a max contract, refused to fulfill it, paid over $19 million in penalties, and forced his way out anyway. Nerlens Noel's free agency bet. In 2017, Nerlens Noel was a restricted free agent with the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas offered him a 4-year deal worth over $70 million, averaging roughly $17.5 million per season. Noel turned it down. He was targeting something closer to $100 million on the open market. The Mavericks pulled the offer completely after the rejection and didn't come back with another long-term deal. Noel signed his own qualifying offer, a 1-year deal worth $4.1 million, and waited for the market to come to him. It didn't. During the 2017 to 2018 season, he missed 42 games due to injury and averaged 4.4 points and 5.6 rebounds. His market value dropped significantly. He never signed a contract anywhere close to the original offer. Later, legal proceedings claimed he lost approximately $58 million in potential earnings as a direct result of declining that deal. That's the number his own lawsuit pointed to. He had $70 million guaranteed in front of him at 23 years old, turned it down expecting more, got hurt, underperformed, and watched the window close completely. Every deal he signed afterward was short-term and below the value of what Dallas originally put on the table. Joe Smith's secret deal. In 1999, the Minnesota Timberwolves signed Joe Smith to what appeared to be a below-market one-year contract. But behind the scenes, there was a separate illegal agreement in place. Smith would sign 3 consecutive one-year deals at artificially low salaries, and then after the team built up bird rights, Minnesota would give him a massive long-term deal worth approximately $86 million. That kind of arrangement was explicitly prohibited under the collective bargaining agreement. The scheme was discovered during a lawsuit involving Smith's agents, and written documentation of the agreement was found. The NBA confirmed the existence of a secret deal promising future compensation outside the official contract structure. Commissioner David Stern handed down one of the harshest punishments in league history. The Timberwolves were fined $3.5 million, stripped of 5 first-round picks between 2001 and 2005, and owner Glenn Taylor was suspended. General manager Kevin McHale was forced to take a leave of absence. Minnesota lost control of its entire draft pipeline for half a decade. This directly limited the organization's ability to build around Kevin Garnett, who was already one of the best players in the league. The franchise's competitiveness declined for years as a direct result. The Timberwolves tried to game the salary cap, got caught, and paid an enormous price that went well beyond any benefit they would have received from the arrangement. Carmelo's Knicks timing. In February 2011, Carmelo Anthony still had 1 year remaining on his contract with the Denver Nuggets. He could have let that year play out and signed with the New York Knicks as a free agent in the summer. If he'd done that, the Knicks wouldn't have given up anything to get him. Instead, he forced a trade months before free agency. The deal sent Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Timofey Mozgov, draft picks, and cash to Denver. Anthony signed a 3-year, $65 million extension immediately after the trade was completed. The Knicks were above 500 mid-season before the deal, built around a core of young players. They gutted that core to land Anthony months before they could have had him for free. Chauncey Billups also came over in the deal and was later amnestied by New York. Denver stayed competitive immediately after moving Anthony and won games right away, showing the assets they received had real value. Anthony's camp made clear he wanted New York and wanted it locked in with contract security before free agency hit. That preference cost the Knicks multiple starters, young players, and future draft capital for a player they could have signed without giving up a single asset just months later. It remains one of the more straightforward examples of a player's destination preference directly costing a franchise significant resources. Damian Lillard's Miami demand. In July 2023, Damian Lillard requested a trade from the Portland Trail Blazers after 11 seasons. He was coming off a season where he averaged 32.2 points per game, one of the best scoring averages in the league. Most trade requests leave the destination open. Lillard's didn't. Multiple reports confirmed he wanted the Miami Heat specifically and had no interest in going elsewhere. That's an unusual level of control to attempt in a trade situation. The NBA took notice. The league issued a memo warning teams about players signaling they would only accept one destination because that kind of public narrowing suppresses competing offers and manipulates the trade market. Miami didn't have the asset packages that other teams could offer, so Portland's leverage was severely limited by Lillard's stance. The Blazers ultimately ignored his preference entirely. Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, not Miami. He ended up in a city he hadn't asked for, and Portland got a better return by rejecting his preferred destination. The situation triggered a league-wide conversation about how much control players should have over trade destinations. Lillard spent 11 years in Portland, played at an elite level, and earned the right to seek a better situation. But the decision to name one specific team publicly and trigger a formal league response in the process is what puts this one on the list. Mavericks tank. The 2022 to 2023 Dallas Mavericks were supposed to be a contender. They started the season with playoff expectations, and when they acquired Kyrie Irving at the trade deadline, things looked even more promising. At one point, they were 31-26, sitting 5th in the Western Conference. That's a playoff team, but then something shifted. They went 7-18 down the stretch and finished the season 38-44. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Mavericks owed a first-round pick to the New York Knicks, but it was top 10 protected, meaning if the pick landed outside the top 10, it would be conveyed to New York. So Dallas had a very real financial reason to lose. On April 7, 2023, they played the Chicago Bulls. Luka played only the first quarter. Kyrie Irving and other starters were either inactive or listed as limited, The team described the decision as organizational. Their bench-heavy lineup lost the game. That loss officially eliminated them from the play in tournament and increased their chances of keeping their own pick. They missed the playoffs entirely. The NBA was not happy. The league fined the Mavericks $750,000 for conduct detrimental to the game, which is the league's formal way of saying they knew exactly what Dallas was doing. They kept the pick due to the protection structure. So the plan worked, but it came with a fine and a whole lot of questions about competitive integrity. Alonzo Mourning Raptors' refusal. On December 17, 2004, the Toronto Raptors traded Vince Carter to the New Jersey Nets. In return, they received Alonzo Mourning, Eric Williams, Aaron Williams, and 2 first-round picks. On paper, Mourning was a massive piece of that return. He was a 7-time All-Star and a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. The Raptors thought they were getting a proven anchor. Mourning had a different idea. He refused to report to Toronto. He never joined the team. He never played a single game for the Raptors. He was still under a guaranteed contract at the time, but that didn't matter to him. Toronto had no real leverage. Eventually, they bought out the remaining approximately $9 million on his contract just to resolve the situation. And here's the part that stings the most for Raptors fans. Shortly after the buyout, Mourning signed with the Miami Heat, which was exactly where he wanted to be. He got paid by Toronto, then went and joined a contender without Toronto getting anything meaningful in return. The Raptors were left with role players and picks instead of the star center they thought they'd acquired. The Heat gained a veteran presence without giving up a single asset to get him. Mourning essentially used the trade as a mechanism to choose his own destination, collected his money along the way, and the Raptors were the ones who absorbed the loss on the whole situation. Ricky Davis, triple-double attempt. On March 16, 2003, the Cleveland Cavaliers were beating the Utah Jazz 120-95 with seconds left in the game. Ricky Davis had 28 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds. He needed one more rebound to complete a triple-double. What he did next is one of the most memorable moments in basketball history, and not for a good reason. Davis took an inbound pass, ran toward his own basket, and intentionally shot the ball at the wrong rim so he could grab the rebound himself. The problem is that a shot at your own basket doesn't count as an official field goal attempt. And because it doesn't count as an official attempt, the rebound doesn't count either. The plan failed completely. Utah's players were furious. They immediately fouled him hard. After realizing what he was doing, Coach Jerry Sloan publicly criticized the decision. The Cavaliers fined Davis for unsportsmanlike conduct, and he walked away with zero statistical benefit from the whole situation. He gained nothing. He earned a fine, national criticism, and a nickname. People still call him Wrong Rim Ricky to this day. It became one of the most referenced examples of blatant stat padding in basketball history. The triple-double never happened, the attempt was disallowed, and Davis became the permanent face of trying too hard to manufacture a milestone that simply wasn't there. Kobe and Dirk. During the 2011 NBA lockout, Kobe Bryant was in serious talks to play for Virtus Bologna in Italy. Not just casual talks either. Real negotiations, real money, real discussions about building a temporary roster around him. At the same time, Dirk Nowitzki, who had just won the 2011 NBA championship and finals MVP, was openly saying he'd consider heading back to Europe to play. Dirk had roots there too, having played professionally in Germany before coming to the NBA. European teams saw the lockout as an opportunity, and they weren't wrong. Virtus Bologna was aggressively pursuing Kobe and exploring what a stacked temporary lineup could look like. The idea started gaining real traction because lockout contracts were short-term and flexible, and European teams were willing to do whatever it took for the exposure. Think about what that pairing would have actually been. Dirk, a 7-footer who could shoot from anywhere, alongside Kobe, one of the greatest perimeter scorers ever, 2 of the most skilled offensive players in NBA history on the same European roster for a few months. It didn't happen because the NBA lockout ended before anything was finalized. Both players came back to the league without ever suiting up overseas together. But the fact that it came that close is genuinely wild. 2 all-time greats, already at the peak of their legacies, almost sharing a locker room in Italy of all places. The lockout nearly gave us something nobody asked for, but everyone would have watched. Looney equals KD. In 2014, Kevon Looney was one of the most talked about high school prospects in the entire country. He was a 5-star recruit, a McDonald's All-American, and at Hamilton High School in Milwaukee, he was putting up numbers that didn't make sense for a high schooler. His senior season averages were 27.9 points, 12.7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 8 blocks per game. Major outlets were describing that stat line as nearly a quadruple double on a nightly basis. He's 6'9", but he was handling the ball on the perimeter, creating shots, passing like a guard, and doing it all at an elite level. That combination is exactly why mixtapes started calling him the next Kevin Durant. It wasn't just hype either. His team went undefeated in conference play, won the conference title, and Looney took home Wisconsin Mr. Basketball. National recruiting rankings had him among the very best in the country. At UCLA, he led all freshmen nationally in double-doubles in his first year. Lottery pick projections were real and backed by what he was actually doing on the court. The KD comparison came specifically because he played like a guard at near 7-foot size across every single statistical category, which almost nobody at that age could do. He was versatile in a way that felt genuinely special before he ever played a college game, and yet, here he is, known today mostly as a role player for Golden State. Sometimes, the hype just doesn't match the outcome, no matter how real it looked at the time. Both white, on March 13th, 2022, the Oklahoma City Thunder and Memphis Grizzlies both showed up to their game wearing white uniforms. Both teams, same color, standing on the same court at tip-off. The NBA had removed the traditional home equals white, away equals color rule back in 2017, giving teams the flexibility to choose from multiple uniform options. That flexibility is also what caused the problem. Oklahoma City was scheduled to wear white. Memphis was supposed to wear blue. Memphis showed up in white anyway. Referees stopped the game before it even started. Memphis had to go back to the locker room, change into their blue uniforms, and the game was delayed several minutes. It was described as a breakdown in communication between the teams and the league's uniform coordination system. And it wasn't just similar shades of white, it was the exact same primary color on both sides, which made it genuinely impossible to tell the rosters apart. Memphis came back out in blue. The game resumed, and they went on to win 125-118. The whole situation lasted only a few minutes, but it remains one of the most visually absurd moments in recent NBA history. Two professional franchises, both with full front offices and league coordination behind them, still somehow ended up on the same court looking identical. The modern uniform system gives teams more options, but on that night, having more options created a problem nobody thought was actually possible. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Kobe versus Pau. Before the 2008 Beijing Olympics even tipped off, Kobe Bryant told his Team USA teammates exactly what he was going to do on the very first possession against Spain. He said he was going to run straight through Pau's chest. LeBron James and Dwyane Wade both recalled hearing it. Kobe knew Spain's opening play, knew Gasol would be setting a screen, and planned to send a message before the game had even found a rhythm. On that first possession, Gasol set a screen. Kobe came through at full speed and knocked him directly to the floor. Kobe was called for a foul. Gasol later said Kobe went right through the middle of his chest. The part that makes this genuinely strange is that Kobe and Gasol were Lakers teammates. They had just played together in the 2008 NBA Finals months earlier. Kobe had even visited Gasol in the Olympic Village before the game, spending time with the Spanish team socially. Then he walked onto the court and made his first act a calculated physical collision with his own teammate. According to the players who were there, the move immediately shifted the intensity of the entire Team USA group. It sent a message that the gold medal was the only thing that mattered, teammates on the other side of the court included. The Redeem Team went on to win gold after the United States had finished with a disappointing bronze at the 2004 Olympics. That first possession set the tone for all of it. F. Trae Young, during Game 1 of the 2026 Eastern Conference Playoffs at Madison Square Garden, Knicks fans broke into a loud chant directed at Trae Young. That would be a completely normal thing to say, except Trae Young wasn't in the game. He wasn't even in the building. He had been traded to the Washington Wizards earlier that season. The opposing team in the playoffs wasn't Atlanta. Young had no connection to the series at all, and yet the chant was clearly audible and described by multiple outlets as breaking out late in the game. It goes back to 2021 when Trae Young averaged 29.2 points and 9.8 assists in a playoff series against the Knicks, and spent the entire time taunting the crowd and embracing the villain role at Madison Square Garden. That moment apparently burned itself into the building permanently. By 2026, media outlets were already writing about the chant before the playoffs even started, calling it a regular expectation heading into any postseason run for New York. One of those outlets described Young's presence as a ghost hanging over the rivalry despite his absence. He's not on the team. He's not in the city. He's not in the playoff. And they're still chanting. That's the level of impact one playoff series had on an entire FANB ace. Young turned himself into a permanent fixture of Madison Square Garden culture without playing a single game there in years. Combat basketball. In 1991, a Super Nintendo basketball game came out called Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. The concept was simple. It's the year 2030. Bill Laimbeer is the commissioner of a futuristic basketball league, and his first move is to fire every single referee and remove all the rules. No fouls, no violations. Players can shove, hit, and physically attack each other freely. Weapons like bombs appear on the court. The crowd can interfere with the game. Scoring is almost secondary to just surviving. The whole thing was a rebranded version of a game originally called Future Basketball, retitled specifically to match Laimbeer's real-life reputation as a Detroit Pistons center, who was one of the most physically aggressive and widely disliked players in the league. He was the face of the bad boys era in Detroit, known for hard fouls, intimidation, and making every game feel like a contact sport. The game developers looked at that reputation and thought, this guy should run a lawless basketball league in the future. And honestly, it fits. Laimbeer's entire identity during his playing career was based on breaking the unwritten rules of how the game was supposed to be played. Turning that into an actual game mechanic where breaking rules is the point is a genuinely strange kind of tribute. It's one of the only sports video games ever made where the core gameplay loop is built entirely around a real player's reputation for being difficult to deal with. Providence Steamrollers. The Providence Steamrollers were one of the original 11 franchises in professional basketball history, founded in 1946 as part of the Basketball Association of America, the league that eventually became the NBA. They played in Providence, Rhode Island, at the Rhode Island Auditorium, and they lasted exactly 3 seasons before folding completely in 1949. Their total record across those 3 years was 46 wins and 122 losses. Their worst season was the 1947-48 year, when they went 6-42. That 6-win season is still the fewest wins in a single season in NBA history. They never made the playoffs once, not a single postseason appearance across their entire existence. Their coach Nat Hickey activated himself as a player during that stretch and played at age 45, just days before turning 46, which made him the oldest player in NBA history. The team also played in the first Christmas Day game in NBA history in 1947. After folding, 7 of their players were bought out and sent directly to the Boston Celtics. The franchise just disappeared. One of the founding teams of what became the most popular basketball league on the planet, gone after 3 years, holding the record for the worst single-season win total ever, with a coach who had to put himself in the lineup. Early professional basketball was genuinely chaotic in ways that are hard to fully picture today. Chandler Deal. On February 17, 2009, the Oklahoma City Thunder completed a trade for Tyson Chandler. The Thunder were sending Chris Wilcox, Joe Smith, and the rights to Devon Harden to the New Orleans Hornets in exchange for Chandler, who was 26 years old at the time, and a starting center for a Hornets team that had been a 2 seed the previous season. Chandler arrived in Oklahoma City for his mandatory physical exam. The Thunder's medical staff went through the evaluation and refused to clear him. Their specific concern was his left big toe, which had previously been surgically treated. The team doctor determined the long-term risk of re-injury was too high. The trade was fully rescinded the next day, February 18, 2009. Chandler was technically a member of the Thunder for less than 24 hours. When the news came out, Chandler's reaction was direct. He said he was super shocked and called it nuts. Thunder general manager Sam Presti cited the medical consultations as the reason for the decision. The wildest part of the whole situation is that the trade was already done. It had been completed and announced. Chandler had traveled to Oklahoma City. The team just looked at the results of one physical and reversed the entire thing. Not because he was injured at that moment, not because he couldn't play, but because of a projection about future risk, based on a toe that had already been operated on years earlier. Completed trades getting voided is rare, but voiding one over a single toe is a different level entirely. Benny the Bull. In the 1974 NBA playoffs, during a Bulls vs. Bucks series game, referee Earl Strom ejected a mascot, not a player, not a coach, a mascot. Benny the Bull had been the official Chicago Bulls mascot since 1969. During the game, Bulls head coach Dick Motta argued a call, received a technical foul, kept arguing, and was eventually ejected. As Motta was leaving the court, Benny the Bull ran out onto the floor, charged toward the referees, and made obscene gestures directly at officials. Earl Strom, who was known throughout his career for strict and aggressive officiating, treated the situation the same way he'd treat any other disruption. He ejected Benny the Bull from the game. Security had to physically remove the mascot from the court. This is widely considered the first time a mascot was ejected in NBA history. What makes it genuinely strange is that Strom applied the rules to someone in a costume during a playoff game who was not a player, not a coach, and not technically a participant in the game at all. The mascot ran out, escalated a situation that was already heated, and got thrown out like a veteran who had crossed the line one too many times. The Bulls were eliminated in that playoff run. Benny the Bull was ejected. It was not a good stretch for Chicago. Penny Magic. In the 1993 NBA draft, Penny Hardaway was selected 3rd overall by the Golden State Warriors. Orlando had the first pick and selected Chris Webber. With plans to build around him and Shaq, Hardaway had a different idea. He wanted to play with Shaq in Orlando. Before the draft, Hardaway personally called Magic personnel and asked what he needed to do to prove himself. He then requested another workout with the team and told them to design it however they wanted. Orlando put him in a pickup game against NBA-level players and team personnel, essentially a pro-level audition just 2 days before the draft. Hardaway dominated it completely, showing elite ball handling, passing, and scoring at 6'7", reinforcing comparisons to Magic Johnson that had already been circulating. Orlando changed course almost immediately after. They traded Chris Webber to Golden State in exchange for Hardaway and 3 future first-round picks. By 1995, Hardaway and Shaq had turned the Magic into a 57-win team that reached the NBA Finals. A draft prospect called a team himself, asked for a second chance, got it, and completely reshaped the top of the draft just days before it happened. That's the kind of player agency that wasn't supposed to exist yet. The player empowerment era is usually associated with a later generation, but Hardaway was doing it in 1993, before most people had a name for it. Muggsy Story. The story goes that during practices at the University of North Carolina in the late 1980s, J.E.R. Reed, a 6'9" forward and star of the program, claimed he could pin Muggsy Bogues physically. The size difference was obvious. Reed had nearly 1.5 feet on Bogues, who stood 5'3". What Reed apparently did not account for was that Bogues was benching over 300 pounds and had a center of gravity that made him extremely difficult to move. Bogues was known throughout his career as one of the strongest pound-for-pound players in the league. Low center of gravity, elite leverage, and a frame built for exactly the kind of grappling situation Reed was inviting. According to the story, Bogues responded to the challenge by lifting Reed, dropping him, and pinning him to the ground. Reed was a traditional forward who relied on height and length. Bogues used leverage and strength. The size mismatch that Reed assumed would work in his favor ended up being irrelevant. It's one of those stories that completely flips the expected logic of how physical matchups in basketball work. Height and reach dominate the sport at every level. A 5'3" player making it to the NBA at all is already an anomaly. A 5'3" player physically overpowering a 6'9" teammate in a wrestling situation is something else entirely. Bogues spent his whole career proving that the numbers on a roster sheet didn't always tell the real story. Untouchable Grimes. Quentin Grimes was selected 25th overall by the New York Knicks in the 2021 NBA draft. By the 2022-23 season, he had become a legitimate 3-and-D wing with real upside, and the Knicks viewed him as a core young piece of their future. When the team was in serious discussions to trade for Donovan Mitchell, Grimes was labeled untouchable in negotiations. The Knicks chose to keep him, rather than include him in a package that would have brought Mitchell to New York. Then the February 2024 trade deadline arrived. The Knicks sent Grimes, Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, Ryan Arcidiacono, and 2 second-round picks to the Detroit Pistons in exchange for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. The move was described as a win-now decision, with the Knicks needing veteran shooting and bench depth after acquiring OG earlier that season. Grimes went from the player who blocked a superstar trade to trade filler in a multiplayer depth deal, all within roughly 18 months. After getting to Detroit, he played limited games due to injury and was later included in another trade involving Dallas, the same front office that considered him too valuable to move for a Starr decided he was a reasonable piece to include in a deal for role players and second rounders. Asset value in the NBA can completely reverse without warning, and the Grimes situation is one of the clearest recent examples of how fast that can happen. Forgot him. During the 2022-23 NBA season, Mark Jackson was one of 100 media members responsible for submitting an MVP ballot. Nikola Jokic was the two-time defending MVP that year. He averaged 24.5 points, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists per game, led the Denver Nuggets to the #1 seed in the Western Conference, and was one of the most dominant players in the league. When the ballots were revealed publicly, Jokic appeared on 99 out of 100 of them. The one ballot that left him off entirely belonged to Mark Jackson. Jackson's top 5 was Joel Embiid first, Giannis Antetokounmpo second, Jason Tatum third, Shai Gilgeous, Alexander fourth, and Donovan Mitchell fifth. He publicly said it was an absolute mistake made by him. His explanation was that he filled out the ballot with a positional structure in mind, 1 center, 2 forwards, 2 guards, and built his list around that framework instead of pure ranking. He also said that if Jokic had been on his ballot, he would have placed him second or third. Jokic ended up finishing second in MVP voting that year. The omission wasn't strategic, wasn't a statement, and wasn't intentional. A 2-time defending MVP who averaged near a triple-double and led his team to the top seed was left off one ballot entirely because of how the voter organized his mental checklist. It's one of the strangest MVP voting moments in recent history. President Bradley. Bill Bradley played 10 seasons in the NBA, won 2 championships with the New York Knicks in 1970 and 1973, and averaged 12.4 points per game across 742 regular season games. Then he retired and went directly into politics. He was elected to represent New Jersey in the United States Senate in 1979 and served 3 full terms, 18 years total. On January 12, 1999, he announced he was running for president. His opponent in the 2000 Democratic primaries was sitting Vice President Al Gore. Bradley positioned himself as the more progressive candidate, running on universal health care, gun control, and campaign finance reform. He also proposed billions in annual education funding and a program to add 60,000 teachers over 10 years. He raised significant money early in the campaign, but lost the Iowa caucus by a wide margin and fell short in New Hampshire, 53 to 47% against Gore. The campaign ended after those early defeats. The reason this fits a list of unusual stories is straightforward. Most NBA players who become household names stay connected to the sport in some capacity after retiring. Bradley left the league, won a Senate seat, held it for 18 years, and then launched a full presidential campaign against a sitting vice president. The path from NBA champion to United States Senator to presidential candidate is not one that has been replicated. It's a career arc that doesn't exist in any other form. Isaiah Thomas, in Game 5 of the 1984 NBA playoffs between the Detroit Pistons and New York Knicks, Isaiah Thomas scored 16 points in 94 seconds. The Pistons were trailing late in the fourth quarter. Thomas personally erased the deficit through mid-range shots, drives to the rim, free throws, and a clutch three-pointer. He sent the game to overtime by himself. The arena held over 20,000 fans. Thomas finished with 35 total points for the game. In overtime, Knicks star Bernard King scored 44 points on the night, and New York won 127 to 123. The Pistons were eliminated. What happened in those 94 seconds remains one of the fastest individual scoring bursts in playoff history. Thomas did everything that a player is supposed to do in a must-win moment. He took over, he closed the gap, he forced overtime, and he still lost. Not because he fell apart, but because the other team had Bernard King, who was just as locked in on the other side. 35 points in a playoff elimination game where you score 16 in 94 seconds and still go home is a genuinely rare combination of events. The performance was historic. The result was the opposite. It's the kind of game that sticks around in basketball history precisely because it was extraordinary and heartbreaking at the exact same time. Stockton stat. At the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, the United States men's basketball team, known as Dream Team 3, featured Hakeem, David Robinson, Scottie Pippen, Karl Malone, and Charles Barkley. It was one of the most physically dominant rosters ever assembled for international competition. Multiple players standing over 6'10", multiple all-time elite shot blockers, and yet across 8 games at those Olympics, The team leader in total blocks was John Stockton, a 6'1" point guard. Stockton recorded 4 blocks in 8 games. Shaq finished with 3. David Robinson finished with 3. Hakeem recorded 2. Stockton averaged 0.5 blocks per game, while playing roughly 12 minutes per contest, far fewer minutes than the big men. Part of the explanation is that Team USA was so dominant that opponents frequently avoided attacking the paint against Robinson, Shaq, and Hakeem. A lot of possessions ended in jump shots or turnovers before anyone reached the rim, which meant the centers had fewer opportunities to record blocks in the first place. Stockton's blocks came from help side timing, strips, and rotations, rather than traditional rim protection. Still, the final tally is what it is. On one of the most size-dominant Olympic rosters in basketball history, the smallest player on the team led everyone in blocks. That's a fact that doesn't get easier to explain the more you think about it. Antoine's story. Antawn Jamison grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and his father installed a basketball hoop at their home. The rim on that hoop was set at approximately 11 feet, not the regulation 10 feet used at every level of organized basketball. Every shot Jamison took growing up required more lift, a higher arc, and more force than what his peers were practicing with. Over time, that adjustment became permanent. His shooting style developed with an unusually high release point, extreme arc, and a soft touch that made his attempts look different from almost everyone else in the league. He won the National Player of the Year award in 1998 at the University of North Carolina. He went on to score over 20,000 points in the NBA, building a long career on unorthodox finishes, soft floaters, and a unique touch around the rim. The mechanics that defined his offensive game were shaped directly by a rim that was set too high in his backyard. His arc was higher than standard because it had to be. His touch was softer than most because he had spent years developing it against a target that required more precision than regulation. It's one of the stranger origin stories in basketball because the thing that shaped his entire skill set wasn't a coach, a system, or a drill. It was a misbuilt hoop that nobody corrected. 1-0. Basketball was invented in 1891 by Dr. James Naismith in a gym in Springfield, Massachusetts. The first game ever played used a soccer ball. The goals were peach baskets nailed to the wall. There was no dribbling. Players could not run with the ball. Movement required passing. After each made basket, the game had to stop completely so someone could retrieve the ball from the peach basket manually. The final score of that first game was 1-0. The only basket was scored by a player named William Chase. The pace of play was extremely slow. The physicality resembled rugby-style passing more than anything recognizable as modern basketball. A recreation of the game was later played using the original rules, soccer ball, and peach baskets to confirm what early gameplay actually looked like. The sport that now regularly produces games with scores in the 100s started with a single made basket and a final score of 1-0. It wasn't played with a basketball, it wasn't played on a court designed for the sport, and virtually nothing about it resembles what the game became over the next 100 years. Most sports have a version of their origin story that feels distant from the modern game. Basketball's version is arguably the most extreme example of that gap. Bad teammate. On October 20th, 2018, a brawl broke out during a Lakers versus Rockets game involving Rajon Rondo, Chris Paul, and Brandon Ingram. The suspensions that followed were Ingram receiving 4 games, Rondo receiving 3 games, and Paul receiving 2 games. After the incident, Rondo sat down with ESPN and said directly that people don't know Paul is a horrible teammate and don't know how he treats people. He also referenced Paul attempting to enter the Clippers locker room the previous year as additional contact. Glenn Davis, who played with Paul during the Lob City era in Los Angeles, also went public with criticism of Paul's leadership and how he treated teammates internally. What makes this story genuinely strange is the contrast. Chris Paul is one of the most respected point guards in the league history, a player credited with elevating franchises and making teammates better. At the same time, multiple former teammates went on record calling him out, specifically for how he treated the people around him in private. Both things exist simultaneously. The public reputation and the private reality have been described in almost opposite terms by people who were actually in the locker room. That disconnect between how Paul is perceived from the outside and what people who played alongside him have said publicly is one of the more unusual narratives tied to any star player of his era. Quad Dub. On February 18th, 1985, Larry Bird played against the Utah Jazz and recorded 30 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 9 steals in 3 quarters. The Celtics had a comfortable lead heading into the 4th quarter. Bird did not return to the court. He finished the game on the bench. A quadruple-double in NBA history is one of the rarest statistical achievements in the sport. Only a handful of official ones exist. Bird was 1 steal away, had an entire quarter remaining, and simply did not play it. The game was already won, and he stayed seated. He was sitting at 30, 12, 10, and 9. The record was there. He didn't reach it. It became one of the most well-known near misses in NBA history, not because of bad luck or injury, but because the game was over and there was no reason to keep him in. What's strange about it is that quadruple doubles almost never happen by accident. They usually require maximum effort across all 4 categories. Simultaneously, in a real competitive situation, Bird managed to reach the edge of 1 in 3 quarters against a legitimate NBA opponent and then walked off the floor 1 steal short. That's the kind of story that doesn't have a dramatic ending. It just stops. And somehow that makes it more memorable. Weird trade. In 1983, the Indiana Pacers traded Don Buse to the Portland Trail Blazers. What the Pacers received in return was not a player, not a draft pick, and not cash. They received John Spoelstra, who was Portland's vice president and marketing executive, for 1 week of consulting services. Bus was not a fringe player. He had won an ABA championship, earned all defensive team recognition in the NBA, and was considered one of the top defensive guards of the late 1970s. Spoelstra was known for innovative ticket sales strategies and was brought in specifically to help the Pacers with their business operations for 7 days. The exchange was an NBA player for a week of marketing consultation. That's it. That's the full trade. There's no version of this that fits into any normal framework for how professional sports transactions are supposed to work. Players get traded for players, picks, or money. The concept of exchanging a former ABA champion for temporary business advice is genuinely without precedent in any professional sports league. The return value lasted 1 week. Bus went to Portland. The Pacers got consulting. It remains one of the only known cases in league history where an NBA roster move involved a non-basketball asset as the primary return. Dillon Brooks I arrest. Dillon Brooks has had a rough stretch, and it just got a whole lot darker. Brooks, the Phoenix Suns forward, was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence in Scottsdale on the morning of March 6, 2026. Scottsdale police pulled him over around 1 in the morning, and after conducting their investigation during the stop, they had enough to take him in. He was transported to Scottsdale City Jail and booked. He was released at approximately 3:30 in the morning. City prosecutors are now the ones who'll decide whether formal charges get filed. Here's what makes the timing even more striking. Just hours before the arrest, the Suns had played a home game against the Chicago Bulls, losing 105-103. Brooks wasn't even suited up for that one. He'd been out since February 21st, 2026, after fracturing his left hand during a win over the Orlando Magic. The injury required surgery. Doctors projected he'd miss 4 to 6 weeks, with a potential return sometime in early April. This was Brooks' first season with Phoenix, and he'd been playing the best basketball of his career before going down. He was averaging roughly 20 to 21 points per game through about 50 appearances. For a guy who entered the league in 2017 and spent time with the Memphis Grizzlies and Houston Rockets before landing in Phoenix, this season felt like a real turning point. The Suns released a statement saying they were aware of the situation and gathering information, adding they had no further comment at the time. At that point in the season, Phoenix was sitting around 7th in the Western Conference, roughly 35-27. Brooks was 30 years old when this all went down, rehabbing at home, and now facing a legal situation that nobody saw coming. Allen Iverson bowling alley fight. Before Allen Iverson ever stepped foot in the NBA, his entire future almost got taken away from him. It's 1993, and Iverson's just 17 years old, already considered one of the best high school athletes in the entire country. He'd led Bethel High School in Hampton, Virginia, to state championships in both football and basketball. The kid was untouchable until one night changed everything. On February 14th, 1993, Iverson and a group of friends were at Circle Lane's bowling alley in Hampton. The place was packed. 2 groups ended up inside that night, and a verbal argument broke out between them. That argument didn't stay verbal for long. The fight that followed involved somewhere between 25 and 50 people. Chairs got thrown, beer pitchers got thrown. People were getting hurt left and right. One man ended up with a broken arm. One woman suffered a broken thumb. Another woman took a chair to the head and needed 6 stitches to close the wound. When police arrived, 4 black teenagers were arrested, including Iverson. They became known as the Hampton Four. Not a single white participant was arrested that night. Prosecutors charged Iverson with 3 felony counts of maiming by mob, a Virginia law that was originally created to combat lynching. He was convicted on all 3 counts. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison, with 10 suspended. That meant 5 years behind bars for a 17-year-old. He was sent to Newport News City Farm Correctional Facility, which housed about 190 inmates. The case exploded nationally. Civil rights groups got involved. Media attention was everywhere. Then on December 30th, 1993, Virginia Governor Douglas Wilder granted Iverson executive clemency. He'd served about 4 months. In 1995, the Virginia Court of Appeals reversed the convictions entirely. Georgetown's John Thompson still believed in him, and the rest is history. Jackson Hayes versus Gee Whiz. This one's genuinely one of the strangest things to happen in an NBA arena in recent memory. Jackson Hayes, backup center for the Los Angeles Lakers, got himself suspended over a mascot. Not a player, not a coach, a mascot. It was January 30th, 2026 at Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. The Lakers were in town to face the Wizards, and the pre-game introductions were underway. The Wizards dance team was coming onto the floor, and Gee Whiz, the Wizards mascot, was running across the court carrying a large Wizards flag. Standard pre-game stuff. Except Gee Whiz happened to be heading toward the Lakers bench area, and Hayes wasn't having it. Hayes drove his shoulder directly into the mascot. Gee Whiz got knocked off balance and ricocheted right into a member of the Wizards dance team. The whole thing happened in full view of players, staff, and everyone sitting in that arena. Thankfully, no injuries were reported for either the mascot or the dancer. The game went on as scheduled, and the Lakers actually won convincingly, 142-111. Hayes even contributed 10 points off the bench that night, but the NBA wasn't about to let this one slide. On February 4th, 2026, the league handed Hayes a 1-game suspension without pay. He served it the very next day against the Philadelphia 76ers. The league reviewed it, saw what happened, and made it clear that shoving a mascot into a dancer isn't something that just gets overlooked. Hayes later apologized to the Wizards organization and to Gee Whiz directly. He said the contact happened while he was physically preparing for the game and acknowledged it should have been handled differently. Hayes was 25 years old at the time, the 8th overall pick in the 2019 draft, and in his first season with Los Angeles. Wild start to the road trip. Gilbert Arenas' illegal poker ring. Gilbert Arenas has had one of the wildest post-NBA careers imaginable, and in the summer of 2025, things got federal. On July 15th, 2025, Arenas was federally indicted. The indictment was unsealed July 30th in United States District Court in Los Angeles. Prosecutors accused him of helping run a high-stakes illegal poker ring out of his own mansion in Encino, California. According to the indictment, the operation ran from September 2021 through July 2022. Games happening inside that house weren't casual. This was a full setup. There were chefs cooking food for players, valet attendants outside, armed security guards protecting the games, and dedicated staff running chips and tracking every bet. Women were hired to serve drinks, provide massages, and keep players company during the game. They worked for tips, but were allegedly required to cut a percentage of those earnings back to the organizers. The mansion hosted regular high-stakes cash games, including Pot Limit Omaha. The house charged a rake, meaning cut taken from every single pot played. That rake is exactly what made it illegal under federal law. Prosecutors said Arenas rented out the space, directed an associate to prepare it for gambling events, and received payments connected to the operation through intermediaries. One custom poker table found during the investigation reportedly had the name Arenas Poker Club on it. 5 co-conspirators were named alongside him, one of whom was described as a suspected member of an Israeli organized crime network. The investigation involved Homeland Security, the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division, and the Los Angeles Police Department. Arenas was charged with conspiracy to operate an illegal gambling business, operating an illegal gambling business, and making false statements to federal investigators. Each gambling count carries up to 5 years in federal prison. He was arrested July 30th, appeared in court the same day, and was released on a $50,000 bond. Morgan Stanley advisor and BA fraud. This one's a reminder that sometimes the danger isn't on the court, it's sitting across from you in a suit. Daryl Cohen was a wealth management advisor at Morgan Stanley. He had NBA clients, and he used that access to run one of the more calculated financial fraud schemes in league history. His victims were Drew Holiday, Chandler Parsons, and Courtney Lee. Combined, they lost more than $5 million. The scheme ran from 2017 through 2020. Cohen pushed his clients into viatical settlement investments, which are policies where someone buys a life insurance plan, takes over the premiums, and collects the payout when the insured dies. They can be legitimate, but they're complex and easy to manipulate. Cohen and his accomplice, an accountant named Brian Gilder, sold these policies to the players at enormous markups. Chandler Parsons got marked up 222%, Drew Holiday 244%, Courtney Lee 310%. These guys were paying 2 to 3 times the actual value of what they were buying, and nobody told them. Gilder controlled the law firm handling the purchases, and that conflict of interest was never disclosed to the players. The operation generated about $4.5 million in profits for Cohen and his associates. It didn't stop there. Cohen diverted $238,000 that was supposed to go to a nonprofit basketball organization and used it to build a gym at his own house. He spent stolen money on home renovations, pool upgrades, personal credit card bills, and transferred around $200,000 to a romantic partner. He even took more than $328,000 from an NBA client's account to repay a former baseball player who complained about losses. The whole thing started unraveling around 2020. Morgan Stanley fired him in March 2021. FINRA barred him from the industry entirely by December of that same year. He was eventually convicted of wire fraud and investment advisor fraud after a 5-week federal jury trial. LiAngelo Ball, China shoplifting arrest. In November of 2017, a group of college basketball players traveled to China for a preseason international game, and 3 of them made a decision that turned into an international incident. UCLA and Georgia Tech were both in Hangzhou, China, staying at the same hotel before a scheduled game in Shanghai. On November 7th, 2017, 3 UCLA freshmen, LiAngelo Ball, Cody Riley, and Jalen Hill, walked into a Louis Vuitton store and stole designer sunglasses during a 90-minute window when players were visiting stores near the hotel. The Louis Vuitton store had ceiling-mounted security cameras. Street cameras caught them walking back to the hotel directly across the street. Chinese police had everything they needed. Around 7:45 in the morning, multiple police vehicles pulled up to the hotel. About 15 officers walked in and started questioning players. Because Georgia Tech was staying in the same building, several of their players got pulled into it too, including a freshman guard named Jose Alvarado. He and 2 teammates were questioned simply because their passport information was in the hotel records. Investigators cleared them quickly, and they rejoined their team. The 3 UCLA players weren't so lucky. Police took them into custody, transported them to a local station, and handcuffed them, keeping the cuffs covered under their sweatshirts as they walked out of the hotel. The stolen items were recovered from their belongings and returned to the store. UCLA suspended all 3 players indefinitely. They remained in China for roughly 72 hours while the situation played out. Chinese authorities eventually dropped the charges following diplomatic involvement. The whole thing exploded in the American media, with even the United States president publicly commenting on the situation. All 3 players returned home, but their college careers and reputations took a serious hit from one very bad decision inside a luxury store. Baron Davis knee injury. Some injuries are bad, some are career-ending. And then there's what happened to Baron Davis on May 6th, 2012, which was both of those things at once. It was Game 4 of the first round of the 2012 NBA playoff. New York Knicks versus the Miami Heat at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks were already down 3-0 in the series. They'd lost Iman Shumpert to an ACL tear in Game 1. Amara Stoudemire had hurt his hand punching a fire extinguisher case after Game 2. The whole situation was already a disaster, and Davis was their starting point guard, holding everything together. Then with 5 minutes and 15 seconds left in the third quarter, Davis was dribbling up the court, and his right knee just gave out. He dropped to the floor immediately. The kneecap had dislocated, visibly deforming the knee on the spot. Players from both teams turned away. Tyson Chandler waved trainers onto the court immediately. Davis stayed on the floor for several minutes while medical staff stabilized the knee. He was put on a stretcher and carted off through the Madison Square Garden tunnel. On the way out, he pointed to the crowd. They gave him a standing ovation. The MRI the next day confirmed it was even worse than it looked. Torn ACL, torn MCL, partial patellar, tendon tear, all on top of the dislocation. Doctors projected roughly 12 months of recovery, and that's if everything went perfect. Davis was 33, had a history of knee problems, and had already been dealing with a bulging disc in his back that same season. The Knicks actually won that game 89 to 87, ending a 13-game playoff losing streak that had been an NBA record. But they lost in Game 5, and Baron Davis never played in the NBA again. That night at Madison Square Garden was the last game of his career. Michael Jordan, Peoria, hotel incident. Before Michael Jordan became the most iconic player in NBA history, he was just a 21-year-old rookie trying to figure out where his teammates were in a hotel hallway. What he found when he knocked on that door is something he didn't talk about publicly for decades. It was 1984, Jordan's first preseason with the Chicago Bulls. The team was in Peoria for exhibition games. Jordan was going room to room, looking for teammates when he knocked on a door and heard people scrambling inside. Someone asked who was there. He said it was him. The response from inside was something along the lines of, "He's just the rookie," and they let him in. Jordan later described what he walked into. Most of the team was in that room. There were lines of cocaine. There were people smoking marijuana. Women were there. The whole thing caught him completely off guard because he'd never been around anything like it coming out of North Carolina. He didn't stay. His immediate thought was that if police showed up, everyone in that room was getting caught up in it together, innocent or not. He said his exact reaction was, "Look, man, I'm out." And he left almost immediately. That night changed how Jordan moved for the rest of his career on the road. He pulled back from the team socially, kept to himself, and built a much smaller circle. He said clearly he didn't use cocaine, didn't smoke, and didn't participate in any of that culture. Instead, he just isolated himself and focused on basketball. The story reflects something the NBA doesn't always talk about from that era. Cocaine was a serious problem across the entire league in the 1980s. Multiple players got suspended or banned entirely. Jordan walked into that reality on one of his very first nights as a professional, and it shaped him immediately. Isaiah Austin Marfin syndrome. Some stories don't involve crime or controversy. They're just genuinely heartbreaking. Isaiah Austin's story is one of those. Austin was a 7'1" center out of Baylor University. He was 20 years old, projected as a first-round pick in the 2014 NBA draft, and had spent 2 seasons establishing himself as one of the best rim protectors in college basketball. Everything was pointing toward the league. Then he went through the NBA draft combined medical screenings, which every prospect does. A routine electrocardiogram picked up something abnormal in his heart. Doctors ordered additional testing, including genetic screening. The results confirmed he carried the Marfan syndrome gene. Marfan syndrome is a genetic connective tissue disorder that affects the bones, joints, blood vessels, and heart. The dangerous part is what it does to the aorta, which is the main artery coming out of the heart. In people with Marfan syndrome, the aorta can enlarge and weaken, and under the physical stress of professional sports, it can tear or rupture. Doctors found that Austin's aorta was already enlarged. Their recommendation was clear: he couldn't play competitive basketball anymore. Austin announced the diagnosis on June 22, 2014, 4 days before the draft. Commissioner Adam Silver invited him to attend the draft anyway. Between the 15th and 16th picks, Silver paused the proceedings and called Austin's name as a ceremonial selection. He walked to the stage at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, shook the commissioner's hand, put on the cap, and received a standing ovation from the entire arena. What makes this story even heavier is that it wasn't Austin's first major medical battle. He'd suffered a retinal detachment in middle school that left him partially blind in his right eye, and he'd still made it to the doorstep of the NBA. 2 years later, doctors cleared him to play again, and he went on to have a professional career overseas until 2021. Billy Ray Bates. This one starts long before the NBA, and that's what makes it so heavy. Billy Ray Bates was born on May 31st, 1956 in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, the second youngest of 9 children. His family had no electricity and no indoor plumbing. His father died when he was 7 years old, and the kids had to work fields just to help keep the family going. By age 10, he was drinking malt liquor. By 14, he was drinking moonshine. That's the foundation this story is built on. Somehow, through all of that, Bates developed into one of the most explosive athletes in basketball. He entered the NBA in 1980 after being drafted by the Houston Rockets, and eventually played for the Portland Trail Blazers, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Washington Bullets. In the 1981 playoffs, he averaged over 26 points per game across 6 postseason games. The talent was absolutely real, but the drinking never stopped. Teammates and reporters described frequent heavy drinking, partying on road trips, and alcohol use around team activities. There were also reports of cocaine use during parts of his career. All of it affected his conditioning, his consistency, and ultimately, his roster spots. His NBA career lasted just 4 seasons. After leaving the league, he went to the Philippine Basketball Association, where he became a genuine legend, averaging over 46 points per game in 98 games and earning the nickname Black Superman. But the same problems followed him there too. On January 17, 1998, Bates robbed a Texaco gas station in Gloucester, New Jersey with a knife. He was convicted of first-degree aggravated assault and second-degree assault and served nearly 5 years at Bayside State Prison. He was paroled in 2005, then returned to prison for about 4 months after, failing a drug test. A career that should have been legendary ended in a gas station robbery. Raymond Felton gun charges. This one unraveled fast, and it started with a divorce. It's February of 2014. Raymond Felton is the starting point guard for the New York Knicks, 29 years old, in the middle of an NBA season. His wife, Ariane Raimondo Felton, a law student at Fordham University School of Law, filed for divorce around February 18th. Shortly after that filing, her attorney walked into a Manhattan police precinct and handed over a handgun. The attorney told police the gun belonged to Felton, and his wife wanted it out of the house. The weapon was an FN model 5.7 by 28 millimeter semi-automatic pistol, loaded with approximately 18 rounds of ammunition. Felton had legally purchased it in North Carolina, but he never registered it or obtained a New York permit. In New York, that's a serious felony. On February 25th, Felton turned himself into the NYPD. He was charged with 3 counts of criminal possession of a weapon, including 2 felonies. The most serious charge was a Class C violent felony that carried up to 7 years in prison. He appeared in Manhattan criminal court the same day, posted $25,000 bail, and was released. The judge also issued a 6-month order of protection, keeping him away from his wife. On June 23rd, Felton reached a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to attempted criminal possession of a weapon and criminal possession of a firearm. He avoided jail time, but was hit with a $5,000 fine, 500 hours of community service, and had to register as a gun offender. 2 days later, the Knicks traded him to Dallas. The NBA then suspended him 4 games, which he served at the start of the following season as a Maverick. The whole situation, from divorce filing to trade, played out in just over 4 months. John Wall home slip injury. This is one of those stories where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and none of it even happened on a basketball court. Going into the 2018 to 2019 season, John Wall was already dealing with chronic heel pain. Doctors diagnosed a Haglund's deformity, a bone growth near the Achilles tendon, and on January 8, 2019, he went under the knife. The surgery involved cleaning damaged tissue, repairing the Achilles area, and removing bone spurs. He was already done for the season before it even got going, with a 6 to 8 month recovery timeline. Then the infection showed up. Doctors found a complication at the surgical incision site in his left heel, which required additional procedures to clean out. The area around the tendon was already compromised, and it was about to get much worse. 3 weeks after the surgery, on January 29, 2019, Wall slipped and fell inside his own home. He wasn't wearing his protective walking boot at the time, which doctors said was actually acceptable at home during recovery. But the tendon was still vulnerable, and the fall ruptured his left Achilles tendon completely. The tear wasn't even found immediately. It was discovered during a follow-up procedure to clean the heel infection. Team medical director, Dr. Wimi Doogui, confirmed the rupture was caused by the fall at home. Wall then needed a second surgery, this one performed by foot and ankle specialist Dr. Robert Anderson. Recovery estimates jumped to 11 to 15 months. This was a 5-time All-Star, one of the fastest point guards in the entire league. He'd averaged 20.7 points and 8.7 assists in 32 games that season. He'd also just signed a Supermax extension worth about $169 million in 2017. The Achilles rupture cost him the entire following season, and he didn't return to NBA action until 2000. 21. Kevin Porter, Jr. domestic violence arrest. On September 11, 2023, a 911 call came in from the Millennium Hilton Hotel near the United Nations in Manhattan at around 6:45 in the morning, reporting an assault. Kevin Porter Jr., then a guard for the Houston Rockets, was inside that hotel room with his girlfriend, former WNBA player Keetsri Gondrezick, who'd been selected 4th overall in the 2021 WNBA draft. According to prosecutors, Porter struck Gondrezick multiple times and placed his hands around her neck in a choking motion. She ran out of the hotel room into the hallway. Witnesses said she was covered in blood. She suffered a deep cut above her right eye, neck pain and trauma, and medical evaluations initially reported a fractured vertebra in her neck. NYPD arrived and arrested Porter on site. He was charged with second-degree assault and strangulation, both felonies under New York law. He appeared in Manhattan criminal court, was hit with a temporary order of protection, and posted bail set at $75,000 cash or a $100,000 bond. The Rockets barred him from all team activities shortly after. Then on October 17th, Houston traded him to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who immediately waived him. On January 23, 2024, Porter pleaded guilty to misdemeanor, reckless assault, and second-degree harassment. The terms required him to complete a 26-week abusive partner intervention program. If he followed through, the assault plea could be withdrawn after 1 year. The NBA determined a 4-game suspension under its domestic violence policy. But since he hadn't played the entire season, it was considered already served. This happened right after Porter's best statistical season, 19.2 points, 5.7 assists, and 5.3 rebounds per game. On a 4-year extension he'd signed just the year before. Taylor Hendricks' broken ankle. 3 games into his second NBA season, Taylor Hendricks' year was already over. It was October 28, 2024. The Utah Jazz were in Dallas to face the Mavericks at American Airlines Center. Midway through the third quarter, Hendricks was sprinting in transition and his foot planted awkwardly on the floor. No contact, no collision, just his own body weight, coming down on a twisted leg at full speed. He collapsed immediately. Players around him reacted fast, and medical staff were on the court within seconds. They stabilized the leg, put him on a stretcher, and took him off the floor. The broadcast cut away from the scene. Doctors confirmed 2 separate injuries: a fractured right fibula, which is the smaller bone running along the outside of the lower leg, and a dislocated right ankle, meaning the joint bones move completely out of alignment at the same time. When a player is running at full speed and their foot plants wrong under their full body weight, the force generated can break bone, tear ligaments, and dislocate a joint all at once. That's exactly what happened here. Hendricks was taken to the University of Utah Orthopedic Center in Salt Lake City, where surgeons repaired the fractured fibula, realigned the ankle joint, and stabilized the damaged ligaments. The operation was reported as successful, but the season was done. He'd been averaging 4.7 points and 5 rebounds in 25 minutes per game through those first 3 games. He was 9th overall in the 2023 draft and entering just his second year in the league. The Jazz lost a young defensive forward and rim-protecting big wing essentially before the season even started. For a player still developing and trying to establish himself in the rotation, losing an entire year that early in a career is a serious setback in every way possible. Terrence Davis Manhattan assault arrest. This one happened just months after Davis had wrapped up one of the better rookie seasons in the league, and it went sideways fast. It was October 27th, 2020. Terrence Davis, a 23-year-old guard for the Toronto Raptors, was at the Beekman Tower, a luxury high-rise apartment building in Midtown Manhattan. A 20-year-old woman came to visit him there around 8:30 in the evening. A verbal argument started inside the apartment, and it escalated quickly. According to the NYPD and the court complaint, Davis slapped the woman across the face, injuring her eye. He then grabbed her cell phone and broke the screen. What made it worse was that her child was standing nearby during the altercation, and the child fell during the incident. The woman suffered pain and swelling around the eye, but wasn't hospitalized. Officers arrested Davis the same night. The charges included assault, attempted assault, endangering the welfare of a child, criminal mischief, aggravated harassment, and harassment. The criminal mischief charge specifically came from destroying the phone. He appeared in Manhattan criminal court the following day, was arraigned on the misdemeanor charges, and released on his own recognizance. His next scheduled court date was December 11, 2020. The timing made this story hit differently because Davis had just come off a genuinely impressive rookie year. He'd averaged 7.5 points per game across 72 regular season games and appeared in 6 playoff games during the NBA bubble. He'd earned NBA All-Rookie second-team honors that spring. The Raptors said they were aware of the reports and gathering information before making any further decisions. He'd gone from one of the league's more promising young guards to facing multiple criminal charges, all in the span of a few months. After his first NBA season ended, Stanley Roberts, NBA expulsion. This one's a story about a player who had every physical tool to be one of the best centers in NBA history and watched it all fall apart piece by piece. Stanley Roberts was a 7-foot, 285-pound center out of Hopkins, South Carolina. He was a McDonald's All-American in 1988 and went to Louisiana State University, where he played alongside Shaq. That season, he averaged 14.1 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 60 blocks. Scouts were convinced he'd be a dominant force in the league. He was drafted 23rd overall by the Orlando Magic in the 1991 NBA draft, made the all-rookie second team, and looked like a future starter. But the injuries started piling up fast. 2 ruptured Achilles tendons, bone spurs in both ankles, back surgery, shoulder surgery. He missed nearly the entire 1993 to 94 season, then missed another full season recovering. He bounced between the Magic, Clippers, Timberwolves, Rockets, and Sixers across his career, averaging about 8.5 points and 5.2 rebounds in 300 games. The weight became an issue too. At different points, he was playing at over 300 pounds, which made recovery from those injuries even harder. In October of 1999, Robert signed a 1-year deal worth about $725,000 with the Philadelphia 76ers, attempting another comeback while still rehabbing from shoulder surgery. The NBA had just implemented a stricter drug testing program that year, and Roberts tested positive for an amphetamine-based designer drug similar to ecstasy. He requested a retest. That came back positive too. On November 24, 1999, the league expelled him. He became the first player ever banned under the NBA's new drug policy. He was 29 years old. He was eventually reinstated in 2003, but his NBA career was finished. D'Angelo Russell, recording Nick Young. This one didn't involve crime or an injury. It was just a rookie making one of the worst decisions you can make inside an NBA locker room, and the fallout was immediate. It's the 2015 to 2016 season. D'Angelo Russell is a rookie, drafted 2nd overall by the Los Angeles Lakers just months earlier. Nick Young, known as Swaggy P, is a veteran on the same team and engaged to rapper Iggy Azalea. At some point during the season, Russell secretly recorded a private conversation with Young on his phone. Young had no idea he was being recorded. In the video, Young appears to casually admit to cheating on Azalea, talking about being with a 19-year-old woman. Then in March of 2016, the video leaked onto social media. It spread across Twitter, Instagram, and sports media almost instantly. Young was now at the center of a public cheating scandal, and Russell was at the center of a locker room crisis. Teammates stopped trusting Russell. According to reports, players began isolating him inside the locker room. The whole thing exploded during Kobe Bryant's final season in the NBA, adding another layer of dysfunction to a team that was already struggling, finishing 17-65, the worst record in franchise history at the time. Russell spoke to reporters and apologized publicly, saying he felt sick about the situation and that he understood why his teammates were upset. Young addressed it too, calling it something that would be handled internally, but acknowledged it damaged the trust between them. By June of 2016, Iggy Azalea ended the engagement. Russell was traded to the Brooklyn Nets the following year. Young stayed with the Lakers one more season, before eventually winning a championship with the Golden State Warriors in 2018. But what Russell did that season broke one of the most fundamental unwritten rules in professional sports, and it followed him for years afterward. Devontae Graham. DUI arrest. This one's straightforward, but it's still a bad look for an active NBA player getting caught in his own hometown. It's July 7, 2022, around 3 in the morning in Raleigh, North Carolina. The New Orleans Pelicans had just finished their season, and Graham was back home. A North Carolina State Highway Patrol officer spotted Graham driving 63 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone near the intersection of Capitol Boulevard and Peace Street. That's what triggered the stop. When the officer made contact, there were signs of impairment. Graham submitted to a breathalyzer test, and the results came back at a 0.11 blood alcohol concentration. The legal limit in North Carolina is 0.8. He was over the limit, and the charge was filed on the spot. Graham was taken into custody, processed through the Wake County detention system, and released on a $3,000 bond. His court date was scheduled for July 22nd, 2022. He was charged with driving while impaired and speeding. At the time, Graham was 27 years old and entering his 5th NBA season. He'd been drafted 34th overall in the 2018 NBA draft, spent time with the Charlotte Hornets before landing in New Orleans, and had just come off a season where he averaged 11.9 points and 4.2 assists across 76 games for the Pelicans. The arrest happened in his hometown during the offseason, in the middle of the night. None of those details make it better. It's one of those situations where the off-court decision-making just doesn't match the level these guys are playing at professionally, and getting caught doing it at 3 in the morning in the place you grew up makes it an even harder story to explain away. Luka trade. The Mavericks shocked everybody by trading Luka to the Lakers in a wild 3-team deal that also involved the Jazz. Los Angeles landed Luka, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris, and money. Dallas brought in Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a draft pick, and some cash too. Utah got Jalen Hood-Schifino and a couple of second-round picks. The Mavericks front office wasn't happy with Luka's conditioning and didn't want to commit to a massive contract extension. They wanted a superstar back and locked in on Davis, who waived his trade bonus to make it work. But things fell apart fast. Davis got hurt in his first game, and Kyrie tore his ACL weeks later. Dallas completely collapsed. The Lakers, meanwhile, got their guy. Luka's already helping them win, and they're clearly preparing for life after LeBron James. Utah walked away with some young pieces for their rebuild. Fans hated it, but it changed everything for all three teams. Kyle Korver trade. The Nets grabbed Kyle Korver with the 51st pick in the 2003 draft and then sold him to the Sixers for a printer. That's it, no player in return. The Nets needed cash to cover their summer league costs, and apparently to grab a new copy machine. Meanwhile, the Sixers ended up with a knockdown shooter who broke their single-season record for threes just a year later. Korver stayed with them for 4 seasons before going on to have a long career that included an All-Star appearance and a spot among the all-time three-point leaders. The Nets, though, got nothing long-term. That printer, probably dead within 5 years. This trade always pops up when people talk about overlooked talent. Korver even joked about it in a speech, reminding everyone that he outlasted the copy machine. It's a wild example of how chasing quick fixes can come back to haunt teams years later. Kobe trade. The Hornets picked Kobe Bryant with the 13th pick in the 1996 draft, then traded him to the Lakers for Divac. The move was planned ahead of time, with the Hornets selecting Kobe for the Lakers. Jerry West was blown away by Kobe's workouts and knew he had to get him. At the same time, the Lakers were chasing Shaq and needed to dump Divac's salary. Charlotte wanted a reliable big man and wasn't ready to bet on a high school kid. Divac didn't want to go at first, even thinking about retiring, but he ended up joining the Hornets a few weeks later. Kobe came off the bench his rookie year, but still won the slam dunk contest. Divac helped Charlotte win 54 games that season, but Kobe's career, 5 titles, 18 All-Star nods, and 1 unforgettable legacy. Looking back, this trade completely changed the direction of both franchises forever. Paul George trade. The Clippers went all in during the summer of 2019, landing Paul George from the Thunder in exchange for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. This monster deal came after Kawhi Leonard made it clear he wanted George as his running mate. The Clippers jumped straight into the title conversation, stacking their roster with 2 elite two-way wings. The Thunder, meanwhile, took the opportunity to rebuild. Shai turned into a star, and those picks gave them insane flexibility for the future. The Clippers had a strong regular season in 2019, but blew a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets. Oklahoma City, somehow, still won 44 games and pushed Houston to 7 games. Long term, the Clippers reached the Western Finals once, but never broke through. The Thunder got an MVP. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to start posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, Pierce Garnett trade. In 2013, the Nets gave up a mountain of assets to land Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and DJ White from the Celtics. In return, Boston got 5 players and a treasure chest of draft picks, including 3 first-rounders and a swap option. Brooklyn wanted to win now. They paired their new veterans with Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez, hoping to make a title push. They beat Toronto in the first round, but lost to Miami. After that, it all collapsed. Pierce and Garnett were way past their primes, and Brooklyn didn't get anywhere close to a ring. The Celtics, meanwhile, hit the jackpot. They used those picks to get Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, 2 cornerstones of their franchise. Boston eventually turned it into a title in 2024. This trade flipped both teams' futures and remains one of the most one-sided deals the league's ever seen. Kyrie draft trade. Back in 2011, the Clippers dumped Baron Davis and an unprotected first-round pick to Cleveland for Mo Williams and Jamario Moon. Los Angeles wanted to save money and move on from Davis's big contract. Cleveland, fresh off losing LeBron James, took the risk and absorbed that deal in exchange for a shot at rebuilding. That unprotected pick had just a 2.8% chance to become number 1. It hit. The Cavaliers landed the top spot and used it to draft Kyrie Irving. He became Rookie of the Year and eventually helped deliver Cleveland its first championship in 2016. The Clippers, meanwhile, got a few solid games out of Mo. including a 52-point performance, but nothing long-term. That one pick changed everything for the Cavaliers and turned into one of the league's biggest "what were they thinking" moments for Los Angeles. Draft protections suddenly became a whole lot more popular. Anthony Davis trade. In 2019, the Lakers finally landed Anthony Davis by sending Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and 3 first-round picks to the Pelicans. New Orleans even got the number 4 pick in that same draft. Los Angeles made the move to give LeBron James a superstar partner, and it worked fast. They won 52 games that season and went on to win the 2020 championship. Davis dominated on both ends and looked like the missing piece. The Pelicans, meanwhile, went young. Ingram broke out right away, winning Most Improved Player and making the All-Star team. The team missed the playoffs, but the pieces were in place. The Lakers stayed in win-now mode, making more bold moves in the years after. For New Orleans, the draft capital and young core gave them long-term flexibility. It was a bold trade, and both teams ended up getting exactly what they wanted. Kevin Durant trade. In 2023, the Suns went all in and grabbed Kevin Durant and TJ Warren from the Nets. In return, Brooklyn got Bridges, Cameron Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and a pick swap. New Suns owner Matt Ishbia had just taken over and wasted no time making a splash. Phoenix wanted to win now, and Durant was the big move they believed would push them over the top. He debuted in March, dropped 23 in his first game, and helped them grab the 4th seed. He even became the first player ever to shoot over 55% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line in a season. The playoffs? Great for him individually, but Denver knocked them out. Meanwhile, Bridges thrived in Brooklyn, showing off way more offense than anyone expected. The Nets got flexibility, assets, and a real building block, and eventually shipped Bridges to the Knicks. Kawhi Leonard trade. In 2018, the Raptors made a bold move by trading DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected first-round pick to the Spurs for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. Toronto wanted a title, and even though Leonard had just missed most of the season with an injury and had 1 year left on his deal, they took the risk. Masai Ujiri bet everything on one season, and it paid off. Leonard led them to 58 wins and then carried them through the playoffs, capping it with the title win over the Warriors. He walked after the season, but the Raptors got their first championship ever. The Spurs, meanwhile, kept things steady. DeRozan played well, and Poeltl began developing into a solid big. But long-term, San Antonio entered a rebuild. This trade changed how teams approach risk, proving sometimes one incredible year can be worth everything you give up. Wilt Chamberlain trade. In 1965, the Warriors sent Wilt Chamberlain to the Sixers for Paul Newman, Connie Dearkin, Lee Schaffer, and $150,000. San Francisco was struggling financially after their move from Philly, and Wilt's massive salary didn't help. Even though he was dominating the league, management decided to reset. The Sixers saw the chance to bring a hometown legend back. Chamberlain had starred in Philadelphia during high school, and fans welcomed him with open arms. He immediately boosted the Sixers' competitiveness and kept leading the league in scoring and rebounding. The Celtics were still in the way, but the Sixers became serious contenders. Meanwhile, the Warriors fell off. None of the players they got could come close to replacing Wilt's presence. It gave them some financial relief, but on the court, it was a loss. The trade became a turning point for both teams and showed just how tricky superstar deals can be. James Harden trade. In 2021, the Nets pulled off a massive 4-team deal to land James Harden from the Rockets. Houston received Victor Oladipo, Ryan Kuric, Dante Exum, 4 first-round picks, and 4 pick swap. Cleveland grabbed Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince, while Indiana got Karis LeVert and a second-round pick. Brooklyn wanted a super team with Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie. The offense looked terrifying on paper, but injuries and chemistry issues got in the way. They lost to Milwaukee in 7 games and never reached the finals. Harden was traded again a year later. Houston hit reset, using their draft haul to build a young core. Allen became a cornerstone in Cleveland's resurgence, and LeVert flashed promise in Indiana before heading to the Cavs, and now in Atlanta. Pau Gasol trade. In 2008, the Lakers landed Pau Gasol and a second-round pick from the Grizzlies for Kwame Brown, Javaris Crittenton, Aaron McKee, 2 first-round picks, Pau Gasol's rights, and cash. Los Angeles needed help for Kobe Bryant and found the perfect fit. Gasol arrived, the Lakers took off, and they went on to reach 3 straight finals, winning 2. Pau became an all-star, earned all NBA honors, and turned that Lakers team into a powerhouse. Memphis got crushed in the media, but things changed fast. Marc Gasol developed into a star, winning Defensive Player of the Year and anchoring playoff runs. The other picks didn't pan out, but that one piece changed everything. The Lakers got titles. The Grizzlies built a new identity. It's a trade that looked lopsided at first, but ended up helping both sides in major ways once all the pieces came together. Chris Paul trade. In 2011, the Clippers sent Eric Gordon, Chris Kaman, Al-Farouq Aminu, and a future unprotected pick from Minnesota to the Hornets for Chris Paul and 2 second-rounders. The Lakers had a deal for Paul vetoed just days earlier, so the Clippers swooped in and changed their franchise overnight. Pairing Paul with Blake Griffin launched the Lob City era, filled with highlights, playoff runs, and a brand new identity for the Clippers. They won 40 games in a shortened season and made it to the second round. The Hornets, meanwhile, struggled early, but that unprotected pick turned into gold. It became the #1 pick in 2012, and they used it on Anthony Davis. Gordon showed flashes, though injuries held him back. Kaman gave them depth, and Aminu slowly developed. That one pick changed everything, setting the Hornets up for a new direction. While the Clippers finally became a team people had to take seriously. Dwight Howard trade. In 2012, the Lakers made a splash by trading for Dwight Howard in a 4-team blockbuster. They got Howard, Chris Duhon, and Earl Clark. The Magic landed Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, Vooch, Mo Harkless, Josh McRoberts, Christian Ainga, and 5 picks. Philly took Andrew Bynum and Jason Richardson, while Denver got Iggy. The Lakers built a super team around Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, and Howard, but injuries and chemistry problems wrecked it. They got swept in the playoffs, and Howard left for Houston after 1 season. Orlando entered a rebuild and hit big with Vooch, who turned into an all-star. Philly never got anything from Bynum, who didn't play a single game. Denver won 57 games with Iggy, but he left the next summer. The deal became a classic example of high-risk trades going sideways. Showing talent alone doesn't guarantee success without fit, health, and long-term commitment. Damian Lillard trade. In 2023, the Bucks pulled off a blockbuster to land Damian Lillard, sending Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, and picks to the Blazers, while the Suns received Nurk, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. Milwaukee paired Dame with Giannis, hoping to form a championship duo and calm concerns about Giannis' future. Portland shifted into rebuild mode, moving on from Lillard and building around youth like Ayton. Phoenix added depth and balance to their rotation, aiming to bolster their supporting cast. The Bucks won 49 games, but got bounced early by Indiana, with injuries hurting their playoff push. Ayton stepped into a bigger role in Portland, and the Suns got solid minutes from their new pieces. Long term, this trade marked a massive reset for Portland, a win-now gamble for Milwaukee, and a depth play for Phoenix. Bill Russell trade. In 1956, the Celtics traded Ed Macauley and Cliff Hagan to the Hawks for the draft rights to Bill Russell. Boston didn't have the right pick, so they got creative. Coach Red Auerbach believed Russell's defense and rebounding would unlock championship potential for his offense-heavy team. St. Louis wanted local star Macauley and saw Hagan as a nice offensive piece. Both sides got talent, but Boston got a legend. Russell instantly flipped the Celtics into a defensive force and went on to win 11 championships, including 8 straight. He picked up 5 MVP and 12 All-Star selections. The Hawks stayed strong and won the title in 1958, but they couldn't get past Boston when it counted. Hagan and Macauley had great careers, but Russell built a dynasty. Tracy McGrady trade. In 2004, the Rockets made a huge swing by trading for Tracy McGrady, Juwan Howard, Tyronn Lue, and Reese Gaines from the Magic in exchange for Steve Francis, Cuttino Mobley, and Kelvin Cato. Houston wanted to build around McGrady and Yao Ming, hoping the superstar duo could push them into title contention. Orlando, dealing with McGrady's frustration and trade request, brought in Francis to lead a new-look roster. McGrady delivered right away, averaging over 30 in the playoffs. But Houston still lost in the first round. The Magic missed the postseason, despite solid numbers from Francis. Long-term, the Rockets couldn't stay healthy. McGrady and Yao constantly battled injuries, and the team never got past the first round with them. Francis didn't stick in Orlando long, and the rebuild continued. This trade all looked like a win for both sides early, but neither franchise got the long-term success they were aiming for. Towns trade. The Knicks brought in Karl Anthony Towns from the Timberwolves, while also grabbing James and Najee's draft rights from Charlotte. Minnesota took back Julius Randle, Devo, and a protected first-rounder from Detroit. Charlotte got 3 players, 2 second-round picks, and over $7 million. The Knicks made the move to chase a title and added a serious scoring punch with Towns. Minnesota looked to shake things up and reset financially. Charlotte jumped in to collect assets for a longer rebuild. Towns quickly fit in and brought some firepower to the Knicks offense. He racked up points, hit the glass, and boosted their place in the East. Randle and Devo gave Minnesota solid experience, while the draft pick padded their future. Charlotte's young guys got more time, and the team looked ahead. Robertson trade. The Bucks landed Oscar Robertson from the Royals by sending out Flynn Robinson and Charlie Paul. Milwaukee made the move to surround their young center with a proven guard who could lead the floor and score with ease. Cincinnati looked to rebuild and move on from the tension between Robertson and coach Bob Cousy. The Bucks instantly took off, winning 66 games and putting together a 20-game streak. That same season, they stormed through the playoffs and swept Baltimore to win their first title. Robertson's leadership played a major part in that run. The Royals didn't find the same success, finishing 33-49 and missing the playoff. Milwaukee stayed competitive for years and even made another finals in 1974. Cincinnati never quite recovered and eventually left the city altogether. Carmelo trade. The Knicks brought in Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, and 3 other players, while sending Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Timofey Mozgov, and picks to Denver. Minnesota jumped in and picked up Anthony Randolph, Eddie Curry, and cash. New York made the move to boost their star power, hoping Carmelo and Amari could lead a serious playoff run. Denver knew Carmelo might leave in free agency, so they got what they could, landing young talent and future picks to reload. The Timberwolves took what they could get to help with their rebuild. The Knicks made the playoffs that season, but didn't go far. Carmelo had big scoring nights, including 62 in one game, but real playoff success never followed. Denver stayed steady and kept making the postseason. They built out their roster using the depth from the trade. Minnesota's return helped their rebuild, but didn't shift the franchise. This move shaped 3 paths at once. Garnett trade. The Celtics landed Kevin Garnett from the Timberwolves in exchange for Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomes, Gerald Green, Sebastian Telfair, Theo Ratliff, 2 first-round picks, and cash. Boston pulled the trigger to pair Garnett with Paul Pierce and Ray Allen, instantly creating a trio built for title runs. Minnesota wanted to reset the roster after 12 seasons with Garnett and grabbed young pieces to rebuild. The Celtics exploded with 66 wins and ran through the playoffs to take home their 17th title. Garnett's defense and intensity completely shifted the team's culture. The Timberwolves couldn't find the same spark and stumbled to a 22-60 record. Jefferson showed promise, but the rebuild didn't come together fast. Boston kept contending and made another finals in 2010. The trade sparked a new era of super teams where big swings became the blueprint. This deal changed legacies, shaped rosters, and gave Boston another banner to raise. Iverson trade. The Nuggets brought in Allen Iverson and Ivan McFarland from the Sixers, sending out Andre Miller, Joe Smith, and 2 first-round picks. Philadelphia wanted to rebuild and move forward from the Iverson era, so they grabbed a steady point guard and future pieces. Denver went all in, pairing Iverson with Carmelo Anthony to create a high-powered scoring duo. Iverson put up numbers right away, and the Nuggets finished with 45 wins, but they got bounced in the first round. Meanwhile, the Sixers wrapped up a 35-47 season, but Miller kept things steady. They used the draft picks to grab Thaddeus Young and flipped one for Jason Smith. Both helped the team's long-term growth. Iverson's run in Denver brought excitement, but playoff success never followed. The Sixers embraced a rebuild while the Nuggets kept reshaping the roster. Harden trade. The Sixers grabbed James Harden and Paul Millsap from the Nets, giving up Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks. Philly wanted to pair Harden with Joel Embiid to push for a title and fill the void left by Simmons sitting out. Brooklyn added depth, shooting, and future flexibility while moving on from an unhappy star. The Sixers finished with 51 wins and reached the second round, but couldn't get past Miami. Harden put up solid numbers and gave their offense a lift. The Nets made the playoffs with 44 wins, but got swept in the first round. Simmons never suited up that season, while Curry and Drummond stepped up in their roles. Long-term, Philly doubled down on chasing a ring during Embiid's prime, but Harden's deal added cap pressure. Brooklyn banked on potential from Simmons and future picks. Cousins trade. The Pelicans got DeMarcus Cousins and Omri Caspi from the Kings, who took back Buddy Hield, Evans, Langston Galloway, and 2 picks. Sacramento wanted a clean restart after years of missing the playoffs with Cousins, betting on Hield's upside and the value of draft assets. New Orleans tried to form a powerful duo with Cousins and Anthony Davis to push for the postseason. Cousins made noise right away with big numbers, but the Pelicans finished with 34 wins that year. The next season, Cousins put up monster stats before tearing his Achilles, which completely derailed the plan. He left in free agency not long after. Hield turned into a key piece for Sacramento, giving them a young scorer to build around. They used a pick to draft Justin Jackson, though his impact was limited. The trade became a gamble that never paid off for New Orleans, while Sacramento leaned into a longer rebuild. Kareem trade. The Lakers landed Kareem and Walt Wesley from the Bucks, sending back Elmore Smith, Brian Winters, Junior Bridgman, and Dave Myers. Kareem wanted a new city that fit his values, and Los Angeles gave him that. The Lakers made the move to build around another dominant big man and bring back their winning ways. Milwaukee knew they had to deal him, so they focused on gathering young talent to reset the roster. In his first Lakers season, Kareem won MVP and led the league in rebounds and blocks, but they still finished 40 and 42. Milwaukee dropped to 38 and 44, missing the playoffs like Los Angeles. Long term, Kareem became the face of a Lakers dynasty, winning 5 titles in the next decade. The Bucks never reached those same heights. Moses trade. The Sixers brought in Moses Malone from the Rockets, sending out Caldwell Jones and a first-round pick that turned into Rodney McCray. Philly needed a dominant center to pair with Julius Erving after falling short in the finals, and believed Malone could be that missing piece. Houston couldn't meet Malone's contract demands and chose to rebuild with younger assets. The impact was instant. Philly stormed through the regular season with 65 wins and then crushed the playoffs, losing only once and sweeping the Lakers in the final. Malone won both awards and anchored the title run. Houston dropped to 14 and 68, feeling the full impact of losing their star. McCray became a solid player, but he never changed the team's direction. Caldwell gave them leadership, but not enough wins. This trade changed the Sixers' entire future and proved how one bold move could deliver the championship they'd been chasing. Irving trade. The Celtics brought in Kyrie Irving from the Cavaliers, who received Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and 2 draft picks. Irving wanted out from LeBron's shadow and aimed to lead his own team. Boston jumped at the chance to add a proven scorer, hoping he'd push them closer to a title. Cleveland looked to stay competitive while preparing for the future. Boston finished with 55 wins, but Kyrie missed the playoffs. Even so, the team reached the conference finals and nearly knocked off Cleveland. The Cavaliers won 50 games and made the finals but couldn't handle the Warriors. Thomas never fully recovered from injury and was traded mid-season. Crowder gave solid minutes before moving on, and that Brooklyn pick became Colin Sexton. Kyrie flashed star power in Boston, but never quite clicked with the group and left after 2 seasons. Westbrook trade. The Rockets brought in Russell Westbrook from the Thunder, sending out Chris Paul, 2 protected first-round picks, and the rights to swap picks in 2 other years. Oklahoma City had just lost Paul George and chose to reset the roster, working with Westbrook to find a new path. Houston reunited Westbrook with James Harden, hoping the old duo could lead them to a title. Both teams ended the season with 44 wins, but the Rockets made it to the second round before falling to the Lakers. Westbrook had big stats, but was traded again the following offseason. The Thunder, led by Chris Paul, surprised everyone and pushed Houston to 7 games in the playoffs. Along the way, they picked up valuable draft assets for the future. Houston lost long-term flexibility, while Oklahoma City leaned into a rebuild with picks and player development. Rodman trade. The Bulls got Dennis Rodman and Jack Haley from the Spurs in exchange for Will Perdue and cash. Chicago needed a power forward after Horace Grant left, and Rodman's rebounding and defense made him the perfect fit. The Spurs were done with Rodman's off-court drama and wanted better chemistry, so they brought in a steady big man for depth. Rodman joined Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and helped the Bulls win 72 games, the best record ever at the time. They steamrolled through the playoffs and won the title over Seattle. Rodman dominated the boards and anchored the defense. San Antonio still had a strong year, but got bounced in the second round. The trade kept paying off, as the Bulls won 3 straight titles with Rodman, and he led the league in rebounding every year. The deal showed that taking a risk on a wild card can pay off huge when the fit is just right. Drexler trade. The Rockets brought in Clyde Drexler and Tracy Murray from the Blazers, giving up Otis Thorpe, Marcelo Nicola's draft rights, and a first-round pick. Houston wanted to reunite Drexler with Hakeem Olajuwon and boost their scoring for another title push. Portland honored Drexler's wish to compete for a ring and looked to rebuild with future assets. The Rockets closed the season with 47 wins and entered the playoffs as the 6th seed. Drexler stepped up big in the postseason, helping Houston repeat as champion. His leadership and scoring proved critical down the stretch. Portland didn't see much short-term progress after the trade, but the move marked a shift toward developing younger talent. The Rockets cemented their championship legacy, while the Blazers moved into a new era. Ray Allen trade. The Supersonics brought in Ray Allen, Flip Murray, Kevin Ollie, and a conditional pick from the Bucks, who received Gary Payton and Desmond Mason. Milwaukee made the deal to push for a playoff run, counting on Payton's leadership and defense. Coach George Karl had past ties with Payton and clashed with Allen, speeding up the move. Seattle knew Payton could leave in free agency, so they opted to rebuild with a younger all-star. Allen made an instant impact, averaging over 24 points. While Seattle missed the playoffs that year, Milwaukee grabbed the 7th seed, but got knocked out in round 1. Payton left that offseason, ending his short stint with the team. Allen became Seattle's franchise player and led them to the playoffs in 2005. Milwaukee never fully recovered from losing their top scorer. Kidd trades. The Mavericks first sent Jason Kidd to the Suns in 1996, receiving Michael Finley, Sam Cassell, and AC Green. Dallas made the move after chemistry issues and losing seasons stacked up. Phoenix wanted a top-tier playmaker and believed Kidd could lead their backcourt. Finley became Dallas's go-to scorer and helped shape their rebuild. The Suns stayed playoff ready with Kidd, though deeper runs never came. In 2008, Kidd returned to Dallas from the Nets in a blockbuster deal involving Devin Harris, multiple players, 2 first-round picks, and cash. The Mavericks chased veteran leadership and championship focus, while New Jersey went younger. Kidd helped stabilize Dallas and guided them to consistent playoff runs. His leadership peaked in 2011 when the Mavericks captured their first title, with Kidd playing a vital role. Meanwhile, the Nets entered a full rebuild. Shaq trade. The Heat landed Shaquille O'Neal from the Lakers, who received Lamar Odom, Butler, Brian Grant, and a future first-round pick. Los Angeles moved on from Shaq after clashes with Kobe Bryant and contract issues, aiming to reshape the team around one star. Miami saw a chance to go all in and paired Shaq with young D. Wade. The Heat jumped to 59 wins and made the conference finals, with Shaq putting up strong numbers and nearly winning MVP. The Lakers fell off, winning just 34 games and missing the playoffs. Odom showed promise and became a valuable piece. Miami cashed in the next year, winning the title behind Shaq's presence and Wade's rise. The Lakers used their return to rebuild and eventually grabbed 2 more rings with Odom helping that run. This trade flipped the league's power, proved how bold moves pay off, and showed the risks of managing superstar duos. Darren Williams trade. The Nets brought in Darren Williams from the Jazz, sending out Devin Harris, rookie Derek Favors, 2 first-round picks, and cash. Utah didn't want to risk losing Williams for nothing, especially after tensions with coach Jerry Sloan and his looming player option. The Nets wanted a star to build around and made the move ahead of their relocation to Brooklyn. Williams only played 12 games that season due to injury, but he averaged nearly 13 assists and gave the team hope. He re-signed in 2012, but the team never found real playoff success. By 2015, the Nets bought out his deal. Utah used the trade to rebuild, developing Favors into a long-term piece and drafting Enes Kanter. Harris provided veteran help, and they stayed flexible for the future. Dr. J trade. The Sixers bought Julius Erving from the Nets for $3 million, landing one of the sport's biggest stars just days before the season. The Nets were crushed by financial demands after joining the NBA, including massive fees to the league and the Knicks. When ownership backed out of a promised raise, Erving held out, and the team sold his contract to stay afloat. Philly saw the chance to grab a superstar and made the move. Erving immediately became the Sixers' leader, guiding them to 50 wins and an NBA Finals run. Meanwhile, the Nets completely fell apart, finishing with just 22 wins and relocating to New Jersey the next year. Erving helped turn the Sixers into consistent contenders and won a title in 1983. The Nets faced years of struggles. Barkley trade. The Suns landed Charles Barkley from the Sixers in exchange for Jeff Hornacek, Andrew Lang, and Tim Perry. Philly made the move after missing the playoffs and facing Barkley's frustration with the team's direction. Phoenix saw a chance to add a superstar and push for a title. Barkley instantly lifted the Suns, leading them to 62 wins and grabbing the league MVP. That same year, he carried Phoenix to the NBA Finals, where they fell to the Bulls in 6 games. The Sixers didn't find the same success, slipping further in the standings while entering a rebuild. Hornacek played well, but the team lacked star power. Barkley's arrival turned the Suns into one of the league's best teams and brought national attention. Philly started over and searched for a new identity. Kyrie trade. The Mavericks brought in Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris from the Nets, giving up Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and 3 future picks. Dallas made the move to pair Kyrie with Luka and boost their firepower in the West. Brooklyn wanted stability and depth, especially after Irving's trade request and ongoing off-court noise. The Mavericks stumbled after the deal, finishing 38th and 44 and missing the playoffs. Irving still flashed his scoring touch, but the fit took time. The Nets stayed afloat and made the playoffs, with Dinwiddie and Finney-Smith bringing balance to the roster. Kyrie re-signed that summer, and the next season helped push Dallas to the finals before falling to Boston. Things shifted fast though. Irving tore his ACL soon after. Brooklyn leaned into a rebuild using the picks. Dirk trade. The Mavericks traded for Dirk Nowitzki's draft rights from the Bucks, along with Pat Garrity in exchange for Robert Traylor. Dallas had done their homework and believed in Nowitzki's potential, even though he was unproven in the U.S. Milwaukee played it safe, taking Traylor, a known college standout. Dirk struggled early, but quickly grew into one of the game's top players, leading the Mavs to years of playoff runs and winning the title in 2011. Traylor gave Milwaukee 2 seasons as a role player before bouncing around the league. Nowitzki became the face of Dallas, shifted their global appeal, and redefined what a big man could do. Milwaukee's miss led to regret and changed how they evaluated international talent. This trade changed everything for the Mavericks and became a lesson in trusting scouting instincts over safe bets. It proved that one bold move on draft night can define a franchise for decades. Harden trade. The Rockets brought in James Harden, Daquan Cook, Cole Aldridge, and Lazar Hayward from the Thunder, sending back Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, 2 first-round picks, and a second-rounder. Oklahoma City couldn't reach a deal with Harden, who wanted more than the team was willing to pay. With Durant and Westbrook already locked in, the Thunder chose roster balance over big spending. Houston saw Harden as a future star and gave him the spotlight. He delivered right away, averaging nearly 26 points and leading the Rockets to 45 wins and a playoff spot. The Thunder still finished with 60 wins, but lost in the second round. Martin filled the 6th-man role, but didn't match Harden's long-term impact. Harden turned into one of the league's top players, winning MVP in 2018 and leading Houston deep into the playoffs for years. This deal changed both franchises and showed how money decisions can shift the level 1. Underrated steals. Isaiah Hartenstein wasn't just drafted in the second round, he was dragged down to the 43rd spot because of a supposed knee issue that never even existed. Medical red flag? More like medical fiction. Despite bouncing around early, including G League assignments and team changes, he locked in once he hit New York. There, he became a true two-way presence. His numbers in the 2023 to 2024 season, career highs across the board, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, check, check, and check. Once the Knicks starter went down, he stepped up and never looked back. And what did that get him? A big payday and, oh yeah, a championship as the starting center for the Thunder. Not too bad for a guy who most teams passed over for a ghost injury. Josh Hart came in at pick 30 in 2017. Not exactly a pick people circle in red marker. But what's he done since? Outworked just about every guy drafted ahead of him. Hart's not flashy, but he does all the things winning teams need. He rebounds like a big, passes like a guard, and guards like he's double his size. You want a guy who does a little bit of everything and never stops moving. That's Hart. He's not a stat sheet king, but he fills it up every night. And for a guy drafted at the very end of the first round, his value on the court has gone way past what most teams expect from that pick. He's the ultimate glue guy. And yes, that phrase is tired, but it fits. Jeremy Grant was drafted 39th. Now that sounds low-key, but what's wild is how consistent he's been ever since. He developed into exactly the kind of player today's teams crave. A long, switchable forward who can shoot, defend, and play anywhere on the floor. And that's not an exaggeration. He fits every team in every era of the last 5 years. His role grew from spot minutes to real offensive threat while maintaining strong defense. It's not just about scoring, it's about being able to switch on defense, space the floor, and never be a liability on either end. That's Grant in a nutshell. Players like him don't usually come out of the second round. He broke the curve. PJ Tucker, drafted 35th in 2006. If you blinked, you missed his rookie year. He was gone, shipped to the development league and basically written off. But guess what? He stormed back years later and turned into one of the most reliable vets in the league. Tucker didn't win games with flashy offense. He did it with grit, physicality, and locking down opponents. His corner three became automatic, and his defense, constant. He's the guy every contender ends up chasing at the trade deadline. For a player drafted in the second round who was nearly out of the league, that kind of turnaround screams steal. Devo was picked in the middle of the first round. That's usually where teams grab role players and prey. Instead, Devo turned into a lights-out shooter and a clutch performer. He broke franchise records for threes with the Knicks, including an eye-popping 11 triples in a single game. That's the kind of shooting that shifts playoff series.
Gets it out to Anunoby. DiVincenzo a three. Bang! Bang! Knicks take a 1-point lead.
And speaking of playoffs, he dropped 9 threes in a Game 7. That's not just hot shooting. That's stepping up when it counts most. For a guy picked outside the lottery, that's rare air. Emmanuel quickly went 25th overall. At first glance, that's not bad, but even that doesn't capture how much he's delivered. After being traded to Toronto, he took off, averaging over 18 points a game and proving he could be a real lead guard. That's not a bench spark anymore. That's a full-on offensive weapon. His growth as a scorer and playmaker went beyond the typical ceiling for someone drafted that late. He's not just outplaying expectations, he's blown past them. Karis LeVert came in at pick 20, but injuries early on made him a question mark. Once healthy though, he made an instant impact. Not a star, but a guy who scores, passes, and holds his own on defense. He had an 18.7 average in a season where he got steady minutes. That's not common for a guy picked in the 20s. Teams dream of that kind of upside at that spot, but most of the time, it doesn't pan out. With LeVert, it did. Trey Murphy was pick 17, which usually means solid potential, but limited expectations. He needed some G League seasoning, but once he found his footing, the guy exploded. By year 3, he was putting up over 20 points a night. He became a true floor spacer with size and confidence. And New Orleans backed it up with a big extension, over $100 million. That's not a gamble, that's payment for production. He turned into a wing every team wishes they grabbed earlier. Each one of these guys wasn't just underappreciated. They've all outpaced what teams projected. And the common thread? They didn't hit early, they hit consistently. That's what makes them underrated steals. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways. Level 2, clear value picks. C.J. McCollum entered the league from a tiny school, but his resume was anything but small. He was Lehigh's all-time leading scorer, and that college production translated. Taken in the first round of the 2013 draft, McCollum wasn't just a safe bet. He was a consistent payoff. In Portland, he became a reliable scoring guard who could drop 20 plus any night, not just in bursts. He averaged around 21 points for multiple seasons. He had high-scoring explosions, hit big shots in clutch moments, and worked perfectly alongside Star. He didn't shock the league with superstardom, but he became the exact kind of player his draft slot promised. And then some, a classic value pick that aged well. Zach LaVine came in at 13th overall in the 2014 draft. He wasn't a top pick, but his upside was through the roof. He had that vertical pop and highlight reel style everyone talks about. But it wasn't just flash. He backed it up with all-star production, with multiple selections and big-time scoring seasons. For a mid-lottery pick, LaVine became exactly what teams hope for. A player who starts, scores, and lifts an offense. He made the jump from raw athlete to offensive threat. And for pick 13, that's the kind of return general managers dream about. Malcolm Brogdon? Now here's where value gets clearer. He was picked 36th in the 2016 draft. A second rounder who walked right into Rookie of the Year honor. That almost never happens. His college career at Virginia was loaded with accolades, but teams weren't sold because of his age and athleticism. Big mistake. Brogdon became a rock-solid two-way player, scoring, playmaking, defending, and making smart decisions everywhere he's played. His value is in his steadiness. You know exactly what you're getting. And for a second-round pick, that's not just a win, that's daylight robbery. Kemba Walker was drafted 9th overall in 2011, and that NCAA title run at Connecticut put him on the map. He didn't take long to show why he went in the top 10. Over his NBA career, he averaged nearly 20 points per game, made 4 All-Star teams, and turned Charlotte into something watchable for a change. He wasn't the biggest guard, but his heart, clutch scoring, and shot creation gave his teams real juice. For a 9th pick, that kind of long-term value, including high usage years and leadership, is textbook clear value. Not a gamble, not a surprise, just solid investment. Sabonis was the 11th pick in 2016, but what he's done makes it feel like he should have gone way higher. After bouncing early in Oklahoma City, he broke out in Indiana and then kept climbing. 3 All-Star selections, multiple All-NBA nods, and he's led the league in rebounds a lot. He's a passing big, a walking double-double, and one of the best interior producers in the game. For the 11th pick, that kind of resume stands out. Teams dream about getting that kind of front court value without using a top 5 pick. Sabonis gave them exactly that. Brook Lopez went 10th in the 2008 draft and made an impact instantly. His rookie year, over 13 points and 8 boards per game, with shot blocking and full season durability. He made the all-rookie first team and never looked back. Lopez became a 20-point scorer in his prime, but what makes him a clear value pick is the way he adapted. As the league changed, so did he. He turned himself into a three-point shooting rim protector, something teams now pay a premium for. His ability to evolve while staying productive kept him valuable over a long career. 10th pick, absolutely worth it. Gordon Hayward was picked 9th in 2010, and he proved Utah right. Over more than 800 games, he averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. He made the All-Star game in 2017 and played valuable roles for multiple franchises, even while dealing with some tough injury stretches. Still, Hayward gave his teams real minutes, smart play, and that hybrid forward game everyone wants now. A top 10 pick who delivered and adapted. No surprises, just consistent return on the original investment. OG came in way later, 23rd overall in the 2017 draft. That's the range where teams hope for a bench contributor. OG gave them much more. He quickly carved out a starting role, showed off two-way ability, and flashed games where he scored 30+ while defending at a high level. One game, 32 points, 7 boards, 7 steals. That's elite production on both ends. He's the kind of player that championship-level teams chase. And Toronto locked him in with a long-term extension, showing they saw his real worth early. For pick 23, that's massive value. So what ties all of these players together? They weren't shocking steals. Their draft slots made sense at the time, but what they did afterward, that's what matters. Each one fulfilled or exceeded the role they were drafted to play. Whether it was scoring, defending, rebounding, or playmaking, they gave teams exactly what was promised, sometimes more. And in the NBA, where every pick is a gamble, these players weren't gambles. They were smart bets that paid off. That's what makes them clear value picks. Level 3, major steals. Isaiah Thomas was literally the final pick in the 2011 draft, 60th. That's usually where teams stash a player overseas or fill out a training camp roster. Instead, Thomas stormed into the league and averaged over 11 points and 4 assists as a rookie. That alone would have been more than expected, but he didn't stop there. By the 2016 season, he was dropping over 20 points per game, earning all-star selections and making all-NBA second team. This was all from a player under 6 feet tall who teams doubted would last. The value Boston got from him during his run was absurd. Final pick in the draft, he turned that into elite production. That's not just a steal, that's a franchise miracle. Shawn Kemp wasn't taken at the bottom of the draft, but his career sure looked like someone skipped over a future star. He was drafted in the middle of the first round, and while that comes with some hope, it's usually not where you find a 6-time All-Star and an athletic phenomenon. Kemp became a front-court wrecking ball. Power, bounce, flair, he brought everything. He was a central piece for a contending team and changed what people expected from athletic forwards. His dominance on the glass and around the rim wasn't just exciting, it was productive. For where he was taken, Kemp's career soared well above his draft slot. That's the kind of value teams dream of getting without using a top 5 pick. Pascal was taken 27th overall in 2016. By that point, most teams are just hoping to get a rotation guy. Toronto got a core piece for a title team. Pascal went from G League minutes to starting in the finals and delivering. He didn't just make an impact in one year either. He's had multiple seasons averaging over 20 points, grabbing boards, dishing assists, and playing quality defense. His game evolved every year. He earned an all-star spot and has been a consistent presence on both ends. For a pick that late in the first round, he became far more than expected. That's how a late pick becomes a major steal. Chris Middleton was drafted 39th in the second round. His rookie year was forgettable, but his career didn't stay that way. Traded to Milwaukee, he developed into a high-level wing who averaged nearly 20 points for several seasons, made 3 All-Star teams, and helped the Bucks win a championship. He hit clutch shots in big games, provided two-way play, and proved to be a go-to scorer when it mattered most. That's not normal for a second rounder. His rise was steady and legitimate. For that draft position, Middleton delivered elite value over time. Goran Dragic was picked 45th in 2008. As a European guard with limited buzz, there wasn't much chatter around him. But then he became an all-star, made all-NBA third team, and carried teams as a lead playmaker. He was consistent, tough, and knew how to run an offense. Add in his international success, including being named MVP of a European title, run with Slovenia, and his resume is stacked. He wasn't just a second-round success story, he became a real leader and high-level contributor. His draft slot didn't come close to matching what he became. Rudy Gobert was taken 27th overall in the first round. It's not unheard of for a big man taken there to make a roster, but becoming one of the greatest defensive centers of his generation, that wasn't on the table. Gobert has won 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, made multiple All-NBA teams, and completely altered games with his presence. He doesn't just block shots, he erases them. He leads the league in rebounds, controls the paint, and makes teams change their strategy just to avoid him. That kind of two-way impact from pick 27, that's a massive steal. Bam was picked 14th overall in 2017. That's lottery adjacent, not top 5, so expectations are for a solid big. Not a 3-time All-Star with all defensive honors. Bam became the defensive anchor of a finals team, a switchable big who can guard every position and still drop a double-double. He passes, he scores, he defends, and he leads. His combination of versatility and consistency turned him into one of the league's most valuable big men, and he's still in his prime. For a pick just outside the true lottery, he became way more than what teams usually get. DeAndre Jordan was taken 35th in 2008, and for a long stretch, he was one of the best centers in basketball. He led the league in field goal percentage and rebounds, made multiple All-NBA teams, and protected the rim like his paycheck depended on it, which, to be fair, it eventually did. His offense was mostly dunks, but nobody cared. He rebounded everything, blocked everything, and kept defenses honest. For a second-round pick, to become the best in the league at anything is rare. Jordan did it in multiple categories. What makes all these players major steals is that they weren't expected to be the centerpieces or cornerstone, and yet that's exactly what they became. Whether it was all-star nods, championships, record-setting efficiency, or elite two-way play, they all turned modest draft capital into massive return. Some were picked last, others in the middle or end of the first round, and a few were second-round long shots. But every one of them crushed expectations. That's what makes them more than good picks. They're major steals. Level 4, robberies. This is where things get interesting. These players weren't just solid picks. They were low-cost, low-expectation gambles that turned into cornerstone-level wins. The gap between where they were drafted and what they became is massive. And yeah, teams definitely lost sleep over letting them slip. Jalen Brunson went 33rd overall. That's not just outside the first round, that's in the you might be a bench guy for 3 years and disappear range. Instead, he's become the engine of one of the most efficient offenses in the league. As a lead guard, he's not only scoring efficiently, he's running entire offensive schemes like he wrote them. Players picked in the 30s don't usually turn into floor generals who can carry playoff expectations. And yet, here we are. What the Knicks paid to get him compared to what he's actually doing, that's a robbery. Plain and simple. Jimmy Butler's story is a bit of a slow burn. Taken 30th in the draft, expectations weren't exactly sky high. The end of the first round is where teams usually stash projects or bet on specialists. But Butler chipped away at every assumption. He became a high-level two-way player, locking up on defense, creating offense, and eventually transforming into the kind of leader who completely shifts a team's identity. He's not just productive, he's a culture changer. You don't get that at pick 30. That's like finding a diamond in a clearance bin. Kyle Lowry came off the board at 24. Not exactly the basement of the draft, but definitely not the penthouse. And still, that slot didn't scream future. All-star or championship point guard, but that's what he became. His run with the Raptors cemented him as one of the best leaders at his position. 6 All-Star appearances, a title, and a reputation for toughness and winning habits. That's a portfolio way bigger than most picks in that range. The league doesn't hand out that kind of value every June. The return Toronto got compared to what most 24th picks turn into? Straight up robbery. Then there's Gilbert Arenas, 31st pick, second round. And somehow, he went on to become one of the league's most dangerous scorers. His jump between year 1 and year 2 was ridiculous. Scoring, passing, rebounding, all up. And then he just kept rising. 3-time All-Star, most improved, and a legit number 1 scoring option. The fact that he went that late in the draft and delivered that much value is a robbery that still stings. For the teams that passed on him, Donovan Mitchell was picked 13th, right on the edge of the lottery. Not a reach, but also not someone teams expected to be elite. And yet, he developed into one of the best guards in the league. Explosive scoring, solid defense, and now he's got All-NBA first team on his resume. A lot of 13th picks end up as role players. Mitchell became the centerpiece of a franchise. That's not just a good pick, that's a swipe. Devin Booker landed at the exact same spot, 13th overall. And somehow, teams still underestimated what he'd become. Now he's got a 70-point game to his name, multiple All-Star nods, and he's been leading playoff pushes for years. Mid-lottery picks don't usually come with that kind of scoring touch that quickly. He jumped levels fast and never looked back. When a guy drafted that far back becomes the face of a franchise, yeah, someone got robbed. Paul Millsap was a 47th pick. That's practically, hey, Maybe this guy sticks around for training camp territory, but he turned that into 16 years of Pro Ball and 4 All-Star selections. He wasn't flashy, but he did everything well. Rebounded, scored, defended, showed up every night. That level of consistent two-way value from a second rounder, that's not just a hit, that's a heist. Marc Gasol went even lower, 48th. And the expectations for international second rounders, let's just say they're not exactly sky high. But he came in, anchored defenses, won Defensive Player of the Year, made multiple All-Star teams, and played a huge role in a title run. Big men drafted that low don't usually end up defining eras for their teams, but he did. For what Memphis and later Toronto got out of him, it's robbery with a European passport. These guys weren't just overlooked. They flipped their draft slots upside down. The league saw backups, and they delivered stars. Level 5, franchise-changing steals. These are the guys who didn't just outperform their draft slot, they rewired the DNA of the franchises that picked them. They weren't supposed to be faces of dynasties or blueprints for team identity. And yet, here they are, defining eras, shifting trajectories, and changing what success even looks like. Klay Thompson went 11th, decent pick, but nobody saw him helping launch one of the most dominant teams of the modern era. His elite shooting and ability to stretch the floor changed Golden State's offensive blueprint. His defense gave them balance, and his quiet consistency gave them stability. Klay's the reason opposing teams couldn't just focus on Steph Curry, leave him open for 1 second, and he'd make you pay. That combination of off-ball movement, three-point shooting, and two-way impact helped create the very concept of the Warriors dynasty. For a pick just outside the top 10, he became the definition of a franchise changer. But then there's his teammate, Draymond Green, taken 35th. That's second round. That's maybe he'll make the roster territory. Instead, he became the Warriors' defensive nerve center, emotional engine, and the guy who tied the whole system together. He could guard anyone, run the offense like a point forward, and still talk more trash than the entire bench combined. His skill set didn't scream star, but it screamed impact. He let the Warriors play small, fast, and unselfish, and win with it. A guy like that in the second round, that's franchise-altering theft. Manu was taken 57. That's nearly the last pick in the draft. Yet somehow, he became one of the most important players in Spurs history, a 4-time champion, the ultimate sixth man, and the guy who made the Eurostep a household move. Manu's game was unpredictable, creative, and chaotic in the best way possible. He made winning plays that didn't always show up in the box score. A key rebound, a late steal, a perfectly timed assist. His presence gave the Spurs bench firepower and balance, and his influence helped shape one of the most respected cultures in the league. For a second rounder, that's all-time value. But then we got another piece of the Spurs dynasty. Tony Parker was selected 28th. He wasn't supposed to be an all-star, let alone a finals MVP. Yet he ran point for the Spurs during their golden age, delivering 4 championships while carving up defenses with speed and precision. He didn't rely on flash, he just beat you with control, tempo, and experience. His pick-and-roll game, mid-range floaters, and ability to dictate pace gave the Spurs exactly what they needed, year after year. For a late first-round pick to lead a dynasty from the point guard spot, that's a franchise-changing move that paid off for nearly 2 decades. Paul Pierce came off the board at number 10. That's inside the lottery, but not elite territory. Still, he became the face of the Celtics for over a decade. Pierce could score from anywhere, hit clutch shots like it was his job, because it was, and carried Boston through some tough years before finally delivering a title. He was named Finals MVP when they won it all. More than that, he gave the franchise a long-term star who never blinked under pressure. From 10th pick to franchise icon, yeah, that qualifies. Reggie Miller went 11th. Not the biggest name on draft night, but his 18 years with Indiana rewrote their history. Miller became one of the greatest shooters ever, and not just statistically. He was the original heat check guy, the one who could change a game with the one flurry. He took the Pacers from afterthought to perennial contender, including a finals appearance in 2000. His shot was the weapon, but his loyalty was the glue. Drafting him at 11 gave Indiana nearly 2 decades of stability, production, and identity. Then there's Dennis Rodman, drafted 27th overall in the second round. Not even a first rounder. What he became? A Hall of Famer, 7-time rebounding champ, and one of the fiercest defenders ever. He anchored defenses with no need for scoring, just pure effort, physicality, and chaos. Whether it was Detroit, Chicago, or San Antonio, teams got better with Rodman. He turned hustle into hardware and carved out one of the most impactful careers ever from a second round spot. For that draft slot, that's a total steal that changed franchises more than once. Chris Paul was taken 4th, so yeah, He was expected to be good, but even top 5 picks rarely deliver the kind of franchise-changing value Paul brought. He took the Hornets from irrelevance to contention. Then he went to the Clippers and turned Lob City into a real playoff threat. Then he went to Phoenix and carried them to the finals. He's been the constant. Elite passing, elite defense, unmatched leadership. His impact outlasts coaches, teammates, and playbooks. It's one thing to be great, it's another to go from team to team and elevate every one of them. That's franchise changing at the highest level. These 8 didn't just exceed expectations, they warped them. They didn't just help their teams win, they helped shape how their franchises think about winning, and none of that was guaranteed when they were drafted. Level 6, historic heist. These are the picks that don't just age well, they age like artifacts in a museum. The kind of draft choices that look solid in the moment, but years later turn out to be once-in-a-generation wins that completely rewrote league history, team legacy, or both. These aren't just stars, these are the blueprints. Dirk Nowitzki was picked 9th and immediately traded. At the time, interesting but not earth-shattering. But over 21 seasons with Dallas, Dirk became one of the most impactful players ever. He turned the stretch big idea into a nightmare for defenders, won league MVP in 2007, and carried the Mavericks to their only title in 2011. His combination of loyalty, unguardable footwork, and elite shooting changed how teams viewed European players and how they built around 7-footers. A top 10 pick, sure, but nobody guessed he'd be the league's highest scoring international player ever. That's a historic heist. D-Wade went 5th. That sounds high, but considering how good that draft class was, expectations were reasonable, not generational. By year 3, he had already won a championship and finals MVP. His dominance in that 2006 run was unmatched. He won a scoring title, made All-NBA and All-Defensive teams, and later became the face of a super team. Miami built everything around him. Their culture, their branding, their championship expectations. The Heat didn't just pick a good guard, they picked their future. That kind of return from pick 5, that's historic. Kawhi Leonard, selected 15th, wasn't even supposed to be a top scorer. His value was tied to defense and hustle. But after landing in San Antonio via draft day trade, he evolved into a two-way destroyer. He won Defensive Player of the Year twice, became a 2-time Finals MVP, and won titles for 2 different teams, including delivering Toronto's only ring in franchise history. He made entire systems possible with his isolation scoring and elite wing defense. For a pick that late in the lottery, the ceiling was maybe solid rotation guy. Kawhi broke the ceiling and the roof. Karl Malone went 13th in a draft full of questions. He ended up playing nearly 20 seasons, made 14 All-NBA teams, and finished his career second on the all-time scoring list. His scoring, rebounding, and consistency gave Utah one of the longest-running playoff streaks in league history. He wasn't just productive, he redefined the power forward position as an offensive centerpiece. His pick wasn't a swing-for-the-fences move, but it turned into one of the league's most reliable and dominant careers. That's how you steal greatness. John Stockton wasn't flashy on draft night. The Utah Jazz picked him 16th, a safe spot for a backup guard, or maybe a long-term project. Instead, they got the league's all-time leader in assists and steals. He made 11 All-NBA teams, was an All-Star 10 times, and ran one of the most efficient offenses in NBA history. He and Malone built a legacy of pick-and-roll mastery and postseason consistency. His quiet game belied massive impact. And for pick 16, that was larceny with a clipboard. Steve Nash, taken 15th, bounced around early before becoming the centerpiece of a revolution in Phoenix. Back-to-back MVPs, countless assist titles, and an offensive system that shaped the next generation of NBA offenses. Nash wasn't just good, he was pivotal. His passing vision, shooting, and tempo gave birth to modern pace and space basketball. The league had never seen a point guard weaponize movement and precision like that. Nash turned a respectable pick into a cultural shift. That's a heist with ripple effects. George Gervin might be the most blatant robbery of them all. Taken in the 3rd round, 40th overall, he didn't even suit up for the Suns. They traded his rights, and the Spurs reaped all the benefits. He went on to win 4 scoring titles, make 9 All-Star teams, and post a scoring average above 25 points per game across a 14-season career. His finger roll is legendary. His impact on San Antonio's early identity, massive. He wasn't just ahead of his draft slot, he was in another galaxy. Getting that at pick 40, that's a generational swindle. Clyde Drexler was picked 14th, a pick often reserved for hopeful role players or system fits. But Drexler was a walking triple threat. He made 10 All-Star appearances, led Portland to 2 finals, and capped off his career with a title in Houston. He could score, pass, rebound, defend, all at a high level. He helped build Portland's success and later proved he could be the missing piece on a championship roster. From pick 14 to franchise icon, that's not just value, that's a historic haul. All 8 of these guys were drafted outside the top 4. None were expected to reshape the game, lead franchises for decades, or earn statues. And yet, they did exactly that. They made their teams better. They made the league smarter. They made the draft board look foolish. And they did it without ever looking back. Level 7. All-time steals. This is where value meets myth. These are the picks that didn't just exceed expectations, they rewrote the rules, redefined what greatness looks like, and made front offices look like accidental geniuses. Their draft slots might not sound criminal, but once the careers played out, the return made every other team's decision look like a paperwork error. Nikola Jokic was taken 41st overall. Not top 10, not first round, not even while the cameras were on. His name flashed across the screen during a fast food commercial. Yet what he's done since then is absurd. Multiple MVPs, a finals MVP, and a championship later, he's changed what a center can be. He passes like a guard, scores with finesse, rebounds everything, and makes entire team systems orbit around his brain. No second-round pick should be able to run an offense like this, let alone dominate playoff series with such calm control. Jokic wasn't just a good pick, he's a cheat code in disguise, turning the 41st pick into a franchise cornerstone and one of the most skilled bigs in league history. That's textbook all-time steal. Michael Jordan went 3rd. Yes, top 3. But here's the thing. Even with a high pick, what he became wasn't guaranteed. Nobody expects the 3rd pick to become the greatest basketball player ever. The level of dominance, the trophies, the cultural impact, the 6 championships, the finals MVPs, that's not just a good return on investment. That's unprecedented. Plenty of top 3 picks fizzle. Jordan turned his slot into an empire. He set the bar for scoring, defense, leadership, competitiveness, all of it. Drafting him didn't just improve a franchise, it gave birth to a global icon. Kobe Bryant was taken 13th. That's right, 12 teams passed on him. Drafted straight out of high school and then traded before he ever played a minute, Kobe transformed into one of the fiercest competitors and most complete guards the game has ever seen. 5 championships, 2 finals MVPs, a scoring title, and a legacy so strong, it became a mindset. From pick 13, the Lakers didn't just get a future star. They got 20 years of greatness, leadership, clutch moments, and loyalty. The gap between his draft slot and his legacy is so wide, it practically deserves its own zip code. Steph Curry went 7th, not lottery top 3, not the kind of pick that screams league-shifting legend. But Curry didn't just thrive, he changed the entire game. His shooting forced defenses to rethink geometry. He became a 2-time MVP, led the Warriors to 4 titles, and sparked a revolution in spacing, pace, and player development. The 7th pick usually gets you a solid contributor. Curry gave Golden State a dynasty, a new playbook, and global attention. That return on a mid-lottery bet, pure gold. Giannis was selected 15th. At the time, he was raw potential, an overseas flyer. He turned into a 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP, and brought Milwaukee its first title in 50 years. He scores, rebounds, defends, passes, and does it with terrifying consistency. His improvement curve looks like a vertical line. From pick 15 to face of the league, that's not just a great pick. That's grand theft dominance. Larry Bird was drafted outside the top 5. Not bad, but not viewed as a sure thing all-time great. Then he stepped into the league and immediately turned Boston into a title contender. Rookie of the Year, 3-time MVP, 3 championships, countless clutch moments, all-time efficiency. His passing, shooting, leadership, and intensity made him the heart of one of the greatest teams ever. The pick wasn't low, but the return? Historic. For what Boston spent, they got a top 5 player of all time. Each of these players blew past the ceiling that comes with their draft slot. Some were gambles, some were just underestimates. All of them delivered at a level that altered franchises, shifted eras, and filled trophy cases. From the 2nd round to mid-lottery, every one of these picks belongs in the Hall of Draft Hype. Michigan scandal. The trouble started with Ed Martin, a retired Ford electrician who ran an illegal gambling ring in Detroit and used the profits to hand out loads of cash to Michigan basketball players and prospects. It wasn't some random act of generosity. The payments were part of a larger scheme to hide money from his gambling operation, and when Maurice Taylor got in a car accident, the whole thing started unraveling. Chris Webber was at the center of it all. Prosecutors said he got close to $280,000 before even finishing his sophomore year. Add in Maurice Taylor, Robert Traylor, and Lewis Bullock, and the total hit about $616,000. Martin got hit with federal charges for conspiracy, money laundering, and illegal gambling. He pleaded guilty. Webber denied everything at first, then pleaded guilty too, not for taking the money, but for lying about it. He had to repay $38,000 and do community service. Michigan tried to save face with their own investigation. They talked to over 50 people, looked through records, and eventually hit themselves with penalties. That meant forfeiting entire seasons from 1992 through 1999, tearing down banners, giving back nearly $450,000, and missing out on tournaments. The NCAA piled on with 4 years of probation, fewer scholarships, and a 10-year ban on associating with the players involved. Even head coach Steve Fisher got the boot, though he wasn't found directly guilty of recruiting violations. Michigan's record books got torched. A decade without the NCAA tournament followed. This was one of college basketball's biggest scandals, and it left the program in pieces for years. USC scandal. O.J. Mayo's single season at USC wasn't just hyped. It ended up unraveling a major NCAA mess. He was connected early on with Rodney Guillory, a basketball promoter flagged by the NCAA for past violation. Guillory wasn't just hanging around. He reportedly got $250,000 from a sports agency, with at least $30,000 going straight to Mayo. That money helped pay for clothes, shoes, phone service, meals, a flat-screen television, and even trainers. Guillory drove a $50,000 SUV, all while acting as Mayo's advisor. His nonprofit picked up the phone bills, and the NCAA cited lodging, transportation, and more. It wasn't subtle. Then came the claims that head coach Tim Floyd handed Guillory $1,000 in cash at a Beverly Hills cafe. Floyd denied it, and the NCAA didn't confirm that payment. But they did point out the staff knew about Guillory's shady past. That alone dragged USC deeper into trouble. When the NCAA wrapped things up, they ruled Mayo had lost his amateur status before even playing a game. Every win from that season, wiped, 21 total. USC skipped postseason play the next year, dropped scholarships, and tightened recruiting. The program got slapped with a 4-year probation and was officially tagged with a lack of institutional control. Guillory sued for defamation, demanding $25 million, but the courts tossed it. He claimed it was all mentorship, but the paper trail said otherwise. Mayo left for the NBA and went 3rd overall in the 2008 draft. But USC's reputation didn't bounce back nearly as fast. The scandal became part of a growing national spotlight on recruiting violations and the shaky line between amateurism and big business in college sports. Syracuse scandal. The NCAA spent years digging into Syracuse athletics, and when the final report dropped in March 2015, the findings were brutal. The violations stretched back over a decade and hit both basketball and football, but men's basketball took the biggest blow. It started with extra benefits. A local booster tied to the Oneida YMCA gave players more than $8,000, rides, and shady jobs that padded paychecks without real work. YMCA staff even faked internship hours so players could get academic credit they hadn't earned. Then came the academic mess. Staff accessed student email accounts, talked to professors, and pulled strings to keep players eligible. Fab Melo's eligibility issues in 2012 kicked up more red flags. His grade, changes in coursework, were part of what the NCAA called improper academic assistance. The defense didn't hold up either. Syracuse didn't follow drug testing policies. And the NCAA said Coach Jim Boeheim didn't promote a culture of compliance or monitor his staff properly. 5 players, including Terrence Roberts, Dion Waiters, and Fab Melo, were tied to ineligible participation. Syracuse self-imposed a postseason ban for the 2014-15 season, hoping to soften the blow. The NCAA responded by stripping 101 wins from Boeheim's record, placing the program on 5 years probation, and cutting scholarships. Boeheim got a 9-game suspension, served during non-conference play. Recruiting was limited, and the school paid $500 per game for each ineligible player's appearance. Appeals trimmed the scholarship cuts and gave back some tournament revenue, but the wins stayed gone. Boeheim's win total took a major hit, changing his place in Division I's coaching history. The 2012 Final Four run stayed mostly intact, but the stain on the era never really faded. By the way, If you guys want to subscribe, I'm going to be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, SMU scandal. In 2015, SMU men's basketball landed in NCAA hot water after an investigation uncovered academic fraud and a lack of control from the top down. The core violation involved a former staffer who used a player's login to complete online coursework, making that player ineligible. The problem? That player still competed. And while head coach Larry Brown didn't directly order the fraud, the NCAA found he failed to report it when he learned what happened. Worse, they said he wasn't fully honest during the investigation. As punishment, SMU got hit with a postseason ban for 2016. That wiped out their shot at both the American Athletic Conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. Even though the team was strong that year, Brown himself got slapped with a 9-game suspension to start the 2015-16 season. The NCAA said he didn't do enough to promote a culture of compliance and penalized him for how he handled the situation once he found out. The NCAA also gave the program 3 years of probation through late 2018. SMU lost 9 scholarships over 3 seasons, though they got credit for ones already self-imposed. Wins from the 2013-14 season, where the ineligible player took the court, were vacated. On top of that, SMU had to deal with recruiting restrictions, fewer off-campus visits, and fewer unofficial visit opportunities. The penalties were officially announced on September 29, 2015. Even after a stellar regular season with 25 wins and 5 losses, SMU couldn't go anywhere in the postseason. By July 2016, Larry Brown stepped down as head coach, leaving behind a strong team but a stained stretch in the program's record. St. Bonaventure scandal. During the 2002-03 season, the Bonnies made a huge eligibility mistake by allowing junior college transfer Jamil Terrell to play without meeting NCAA academic requirement. He hadn't earned an associate degree, which meant he should have sat out a year, but that didn't happen. The athletic director flagged the issue to university president Robert Wickenheiser, but instead of following the rules, Wickenheiser cleared Terrell to play, reportedly under pressure from his son, Court Wickenheiser, who just happened to be on the coaching staff. They didn't even bother getting official NCAA guidance until the season was nearly done. When the truth came out, the consequences were immediate. St. Bonaventure had to forfeit every game Terrell played in, including 6 conference wins. They were kicked out of the Atlantic 10 tournament. The players, furious over how it was handled, refused to suit up for the final 2 regular season games. Fallout came fast. Head coach Jan Van Breda Kolff was forced out. Athletic director Gothard Lane got axed. President Wickenheiser resigned. Then tragedy struck. William Swan, the board chairman, died by suicide that August, citing shame for not preventing the scandal. The school tried damage control by giving up 3 scholarships across 2 seasons and cooperating fully. The NCAA still slapped the program with 3 years of probation and banned them from postseason play for the 2003-04 season. The Bonnies didn't post another winning season until 2010-11 under Mark Schmidt. That one eligibility misstep sent the program into a deep spiral. Scholarships lost, leadership gone, postseason erased. The damage was done, and it took years to recover. That scandal hit hard, both on the court and far beyond it. Texas Tech scandal. Back in the mid-90s, the Red Raiders ran straight into NCAA trouble after it was discovered that players competed while academically ineligible. A grade of D was wrongly used to clear 2 athletes, including Frederick Jones and Grayson Averill, during the 1996-97 season. That mistake was just the tip of the iceberg. From 1990 through 1997, the NCAA found violations across 9 different sports at Texas Tech. Over 70 student athletes played while ineligible. The problems? Too many scholarships, academic shortcuts, and a full-on breakdown in compliance oversight. As punishment, Texas Tech pulled out of the 1997 NCAA tournament and gave up all 11 Big 12 wins from that season. They also had to vacate their 1996 tournament run and lost 7 basketball scholarships over 3 years. The athletics department got hit with 4 years of probation and had to overhaul its compliance system. All of that left a crater. The basketball program struggled through the late 90s and couldn't climb back up. Head coach James Dickey was let go after the 2000 season. When Bob Knight showed up in March 2001, the program was still in cleanup mode. Knight brought controversy, but no major NCAA penalties. He clashed with administrators, but didn't rack up recruiting violations or player benefit scandals. Later on, Billy Gillispie got flagged for minor practice limit violations, which Tech self-reported and handled internally. No tournament bans, no vacated seasons, and no major hits after the 90s. But those earlier violations stuck around like an anchor. The scholarship losses and reputation damage set the program back. And it took years before Texas Tech looked competitive again on the national stage. Arizona State scandal. In 1994, Arizona State got dragged into one of college basketball's biggest point-shaving messes. It started with Benny Silman, a campus bookie who roped players into fixing games so gamblers could cash in on bets. His main recruit, Stephen Hedeke Smith, a star guard who owed Silman around $10,000 in gambling debt. Smith, along with teammate Isaac Burton, agreed to manipulate the score margins so the team wouldn't cover the spread. They weren't throwing games entirely, just controlling the outcomes enough to make the bets hit. Smith got about $20,000 for just one of those games. They altered 4 games that season, with suspicious betting patterns popping up in Vegas sportsbooks. Big bets kept hitting against Arizona State, and that's what tipped off the feds. The FBI stepped in, and by 1997, both Smith and Burton pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit sports bribery. Smith landed a 1-year prison sentence and never made the NBA. Burton served about 2 months in jail and some home detention. Silman, who ran the entire operation, got over 3 years in federal prison. The financial side was massive. Gamblers put down hundreds of thousands on these games, all based on insider knowledge. While the NCAA didn't strip Arizona State of the games, the scandal tarnished the program for years. The university tightened compliance, but the damage was already done. This wasn't just a violation of NCAA rules. It was a federal crime. That's what made the Arizona State scandal stand out. Real money, real jail time, and a permanent black mark on the college basketball record books. Southwestern Louisiana scandal. In the early 1970s, the University of Southwestern Louisiana, now Louisiana at Lafayette, became the face of one of the harshest NCAA punishments ever handed down in college basketball history. The program was shut down for 2 full seasons. It started with more than 100 violations. A coach forged a recruit's high school transcript and even faked a principal's signature to make an ineligible player appear eligible. Others took entrance exams for athletes. That was just the academic side. The NCAA also found that players received cash and gifts from boosters and coaches, which blew up the school's amateurism compliance. Improper recruiting and illegal benefits from outside parties were all over the report. These players shouldn't have been on the court. As a result, in August 1973, the NCAA hit the school with the death penalty. The basketball team couldn't compete in the 1973-74 and 1974-75 seasons. That made Southwestern Louisiana one of only a few programs in any sport to get completely shut down. The punishment didn't stop there. They were forced to vacate NCAA tournament appearances from 1972 and 1973. Their records were wiped, and the whole athletic department was put on probation. They also lost postseason eligibility, television access, and NCAA voting rights for years. The program was completely sidelined and didn't recover easily. Even after returning, the stigma stuck. This scandal remains a blueprint for what the NCAA considers an extreme case. Forged transcripts, surrogate testing, illegal benefits. It all added up to one of the worst violations in college basketball, and the consequences were devastating. Boston College scandal. In the 1978-79 season, Boston College became the center of one of college basketball's wildest point-shaving schemes, not just because of the games, but because the mob got involved. It all started when 2 small-time gamblers, the Perla brothers, teamed up with Rick Kuhn, a senior forward on the Eagles. Kuhn had been friends with Rocco Perla since high school. The plan? Win games, but not by too much, just enough to miss the point. Spread? That's where the betting money came in. The operation brought in Henry Hill and James Burke, 2 organized crime figures, to handle the financial side and expand the betting. If Hill sounds familiar, it's because he later became the main source behind Goodfellas. This wasn't a small operation. They targeted specific games and loaded money into sportsbooks with the confidence that BC wouldn't cover. Kuhn brought in teammates. Jim Sweeney testified but wasn't charged. Ernie Cobb got indicted, but he was acquitted. Payments ranged from $1,000 to $2,000 per game, and Hill claimed the group made close to $100,000 in profits. They botched their first attempt against Providence, but against Harvard, they made it work. BC won 86-83, perfect for the fix. It all unraveled when Hill caught in a wider federal investigation, spilled the whole story. In court, Kuhn was sentenced to 10 years, later reduced. The Perla brothers and others were convicted. Burt got 12 years. The NCAA didn't hit the school with penalties, but the scandal became a blueprint for how organized crime could reach into college hoops. It wasn't just shady, it was criminal, and it made national headlines for years. Cincinnati scandal. Under Bob Huggins in the 1990s, Cincinnati basketball soared on the court but unraveled off it. In May 1998, the NCAA opened a formal investigation into the program, eventually slapping it with probation, scholarship losses, and recruiting restrictions for major violations. The investigation uncovered that staff gave impermissible academic help to transfer player Charles Williams, including going to classes and taking notes for him. That alone broke NCAA rules, but it didn't stop there. Players and recruits also got improper benefits like free meals, tickets, and travel, all clear violations. The NCAA found a lack of institutional control, citing the university's failure to properly oversee staff and operations. On November 6, 1998, Cincinnati got hit with 2 years of probation, lost 3 scholarships across 2 seasons, and had its recruiting efforts restricted. No postseason ban was issued, but the message was clear. The program was slipping, and the issues weren't just on paper. During Huggins' 16-year run, the team faced waves of off-court trouble. Multiple players were arrested for everything from domestic violence to bizarre incidents like assaulting a police horse. Staff members were implicated too. Some were put on leave as the investigation unfolded. Academic criticism mounted. Graduation rates were miserable, with one report showing just 27% of players earning degrees under Huggins. Some years saw 0%. Then came his DUI arrest in 2004, followed by a suspension. By 2005, with mounting pressure from a new university president focused on academics and compliance, Huggins was out. Cincinnati kept the wins, but paid a different price. A battered reputation and years of scrutiny. The sanctions didn't end their run, but they marked the cost of success built on shaky foundations. Tulane scandal. In the 1984-85 season, Tulane men's basketball got rocked by a point-shaving scandal that shut the whole program down. It started with students and local bettors offering players cash and cocaine to help manipulate game outcomes, not to lose outright, but to make sure Tulane didn't cover the spread. John Hot Rod Williams was at the center. Prosecutors said he took over $8,000 to shave points in games against Southern Mississippi, Memphis State, and Virginia Tech. Teammates David Dominique and Bobby Thompson were also arrested. Others like Clyde Eads and John Johnson got immunity to testify. In one game, Tulane was favored by 10.5 over Southern Mississippi and squeaked out a 64-63 win, perfect for the Fixers. In another, they lost to Memphis State by more than expected, again delivering for the bettors. This wasn't just gambling. It involved drugs, cash handoffs, and fraternity ties. On March 26, 1985, multiple players were arrested. Williams' trial ended in a mistrial, and the charges were dropped, but his career was thrown into chaos. The fallout was brutal. Tulane's president disbanded the entire basketball program on April 4, 1985. Coach Ned Fowler resigned, along with the athletic director. Tulane didn't play another game for 4 years. Though not an official NCAA death penalty, it had the same effect. The program was gutted. Recruiting stopped. Fans vanished. When they returned in 1989, it was basically a restart. The scandal blended drugs, gambling, and amateur athletics in a way that shook college basketball. No high-profile crime family here, just a storm of bad decisions and ruined reputations that left Tulane basketball broken for years. Fresno State scandal. In the early 2000s, Fresno State men's basketball unraveled under a wave of academic fraud, eligibility issues, and NCAA violations that gutted the program's record and credibility. It started with a former team statistician writing coursework for at least 3 players during the 1999 to 2000 season, paid over $1,000 per player. An academic advisor was linked to organizing parts of the scheme. The school's internal review confirmed it. One player wasn't even enrolled full-time, but still got financial aid. Another was wrongly certified as eligible due to miscalculating academic progress. That meant players were on the court when they shouldn't have been, and that every win during those stretches was now on the chopping block. Outside the classroom, things weren't any cleaner. Players got free meals and favors from boosters and restaurant owners. These were improper benefits under NCAA rules, and the university's failure to monitor it all sealed the lack of institutional control label. Fresno State self-imposed a postseason ban and reduced scholarships. But that wasn't enough. In September 2003, the NCAA also extended probation to 4 years, forced the school to vacate wins from ineligible games, including the 2000 WAC title and NCAA appearance, and demanded 90% of tournament revenue be returned. 3 players, Courtney Alexander, Dennis Nathan, and Terrence Robertson, were named in connection to the academic fraud, though they denied some allegations. Head coach Ray Lopes later resigned amid unrelated recruiting violations and got a 3-year show-cause penalty. The fallout was brutal. Wins were erased, the postseason disappeared, and Fresno State's basketball reputation took a serious hit. The program was forced into full-on repair mode after one of the most damaging compliance failures in its history. 1951 scandal. This one didn't just rock a team, it rocked the entire sport. In 1951, the college basketball world was blown wide open when a massive point-shaving scandal was uncovered. Gamblers had been paying players across multiple major programs to control point spreads, so bets would cash. Teams didn't have to lose, just win by less. It all kicked off when Manhattan College player Junius Kellogg turned down a bribe and reported it. That sparked a full-blown investigation by New York authorities. What they found was stunning. Around 35 players from schools like City College of New York, Kentucky, LIU, Bradley, NYU, Toledo, and Manhattan had taken part. The fixes touched at least 86 games. CNY took the biggest fall. They just won both the NCAA and NIT titles in 1950, the only team ever to do it. Months later, players were arrested in Penn Station. The shine was gone. LIU shut down its basketball program for 6 years. Kentucky's former players were arrested too, and the program was frozen out of the SEC for a season. The scandal wasn't regional, it was everywhere. The bribes, they came from bookies and organized networks, especially around Madison Square Garden, where betting ran hot. Players shaved points for a few $100 here, maybe more. It didn't matter who won, it mattered how. The fallout hit hard. Players were banned from the NBA. Bookies were jailed. Public trust crumbled. CNY never recovered. They dropped out of Division I competition for decades. This scandal showed how deep gambling could go in college sports. It didn't just stain a season. It rewrote how college basketball handled corruption. New Mexico State scandal. The 2022 to 2023 season for New Mexico State was a complete collapse. What started with a struggling record quickly turned into one of the most damaging stretches in program history. It began when a player was involved in a shooting that left a University of New Mexico student dead. Prosecutors treated it as self-defense, but the situation led to game cancellations and raised serious concerns about player behavior and oversight. Then came the hazing allegations. By February, the university uncovered repeated incidents involving at least 3 players accused of sexually abusive hazing, targeting teammates and student managers. The reports led to an internal investigation and immediate suspension of the season. Coaching staff, including Greg Hiar, were placed on leave. A few days later, Hiar was fired. The university forfeited all remaining games, though the NCAA didn't count them in official records. That wasn't the end. 2 former players filed lawsuits claiming they were sexually assaulted. And in June, New Mexico State paid out around $8 million in settlements. No liability was admitted, but the numbers spoke volume. The New Mexico Department of Justice investigated and released a scathing report in December. It exposed a toxic culture inside the program, missed intervention opportunities, and weak policies that allowed abuse to persist. It also recommended over 30 changes to improve safety and accountability. In January, athletic director Mario Mochia was fired for his role in the leadership failures. The fallout was massive. Players charged, reputations ruined, and a once proud program left picking up the pieces. From lawsuits to firings, this wasn't just a scandal. It was a program reset under pressure from the highest levels of the state. Providence scandal. In April 2023, the situation around Alan Breed exploded into the headline. The Providence College junior guard was arrested and immediately suspended, following a disturbing off-campus incident that brought firearm and domestic violence charges into the spotlight. Police reports say Breed entered a woman's residence without permission, pointed a handgun at her, and took her phone. That wasn't all. He also allegedly vandalized property and drove off in someone else's vehicle without consent. The charges stacked up fast. Breed faced domestic breaking and entering in the first degree robbery, and misdemeanor domestic vandalism. On top of that came serious firearm charges, including carrying a pistol without a license. and using it while committing a violent crime. Not surprisingly, Providence College wasted no time suspending him from all basketball activities while the case moved forward and the school conducted its own disciplinary review. Bail was set at $25,000. A no-contact order was issued, and he was required to surrender any firearm. The case headed toward a grand jury, and things got more complicated when the woman involved began to revise her original claims. She told the court she'd been intoxicated when making the first report, but prosecutors said they had evidence that could challenge her change of story. Before the arrest, Breed had been contributing regularly for the Friars, averaging just under 5 points a game. But once the charges came down, his basketball future got put on hold indefinitely. With legal proceedings underway and the school taking action fast, Breed's status stayed uncertain, and the entire situation cast a heavy shadow over the end of the Friars season. California scandal. Back in the mid-1990s, things unraveled fast for the Golden Bears. Todd Bozeman, who started out strong after taking over in 1993, got caught up in a serious mess that changed the program's course. Between 1994 and 1996, Bozeman paid out $30,000 in cash to Jelani Gardner's parent. He said it was to help them travel to see their son play. But under NCAA rules, that kind of benefit was totally off limits. It all came to light when Gardner's playing time dropped and he transferred. His parents reported the payments, triggering a full-blown investigation. Turns out Bozeman hadn't just made the payments, he'd also misled both the university and the NCAA about it, which made things worse. Cal got hit hard. The team had to forfeit 28 wins across 2 seasons and lose credit for its 1996 tournament appearance. Records were revised to show 0 wins one year and just 2 the next. The NCAA slapped Cal with 3 years of probation, banned them from postseason play in 1998, and took away 2 scholarships for 2 seasons. On top of that, the university had to give back almost all of the money it made from the 1996 tournament. And Bozeman, he got hit with an 8-year show cause order, one of the longest ever at the time, that basically locked him out of Division I coaching until 2005. Bozeman resigned in August 1996. The damage left Cal struggling to bounce back, especially with top recruits steering clear. The fallout stuck around long after the sanctions ended, and it took years before the Bears rebuilt their reputation. Seton Hall scandal. From 2016 through 2019, Seton Hall men's basketball landed in NCAA hot water over transfer tampering. Not benefits, not academic fraud, but straight up impermissible contact. The whole thing centered around forward Torian Thompson's transfer from Syracuse. While he was still enrolled there, Seton Hall's associate head coach went full speed ahead with roughly 243 phone calls to Thompson's mother. Yes, 240. And many of those came after Syracuse had explicitly denied permission to contact. That blew right past NCAA boundaries and landed as a level 2 violation. The associate head coach wasn't operating solo either. The head coach at the time was aware of some of the calls and didn't bother reporting them, which meant he failed to promote an atmosphere of compliance. And the NCAA doesn't take that lightly. The fallout came in November 2019. The program got hit with 3 years of probation, a scholarship reduction for the 2020 to 2021 season, and short recruiting communication bans across 2 seasons. They also had to pay a $5,000 fine plus 1% of the men's basketball budget. Coaches weren't off the hook. The head coach got a 2-game suspension, and the associate head coach was benched for 4 games and restricted in recruiting at his new job. There were also mandatory NCAA seminars and compliance system overhauls to prevent repeat offenses. No wins were vacated, and no postseason ban followed. But this was still a clear message. Push the rules on transfers, and you're going to feel it. Even if the infractions don't grab headlines like bigger scandals do. Washington scandal. Back in the 2002 to 2003 season, the Huskies ran into trouble not over cash, eligibility fraud, or pay for play, but from a wave of recruiting violations tied to impermissible contact. Lorenzo Romar had just taken over as head coach, and his assistant, Cameron Dollar, wasted no time pushing boundaries. Dollar made off-limits calls, attended restricted practices, and met with recruits during quiet and dead periods. Basically, he did the recruiting version of running a red light, repeatedly. Once it came to light, Washington self-reported the violations and handed down punishment. Dollar got suspended without pay for a month, had parts of his salary docked, and was banned from all off-campus recruiting through July of 2003. The coaching staff was also sent to mandatory NCAA compliance training and put on monthly reporting. The Pac-10 conference didn't let it slide either. They issued a public reprimand and slapped the program with a year of conference probation. Washington coaches were also banned from certain AAU events and had limited contact with at least one recruit. On the NCAA level, the school was placed on 2 years of probation and lost one men's basketball scholarship. These violations didn't involve money, fraud, or anything rising to scandal of the decade level, but the NCAA still took it seriously. And while Romar's tenure stretched to 2017, no later recruiting violations in the 2010s led to sanctions. When Romar was fired, it had nothing to do with compliance. It was about poor results on the court. So while this early hiccup hit the program with real penalties, it never spiraled into the kind of drama seen at other schools during that era. Maryland scandal. The Terps found themselves under NCAA scrutiny in 2019 after a negotiated resolution revealed that a men's basketball staffer stepped over the line by giving coaching instructions to a recruit and participating in football film sessions, both off limits for someone in his position. That wasn't all. On the women's side, staff handed out personalized recruiting materials during unofficial visits, a clear violation of NCAA rules. The fallout brought a 1-year NCAA probation for both basketball programs. Maryland's men's team cut back on practice hours, and one assistant coach got hit with a 2-year show cause order. That meant extra oversight, rules education, and a giant compliance spotlight. Meanwhile, the women's program lost scholarships and had limits placed on recruiting visits. The athletic department beefed up its compliance procedures to avoid repeat mistakes. This wasn't the first time Maryland tangled with NCAA rules. Back in the late 1980s, under Coach Bob Wade, the program gave out improper benefits like free clothing and transportation. The NCAA responded with 3 years of probation, postseason bans, and the vacating of tournament results from 1988. Wade was forced out, and the damage lingered for years. Despite those past issues, no major NCAA academic fraud case hit the men's team in the 2000 era that led to vacated wins or postseason bans. Compliance problems stayed mostly in the recruiting and staff conduct lane, not eligibility or academics. When Maryland moved from the Atlantic Coast Conference to the Big Ten in 2014, it had to adjust to new standards, but no violations were tied directly to that shift. Still, the combination of past and present issues kept compliance efforts front and center at College Park. Indiana scandal. From 2006 to 2008, Indiana men's basketball was dragged into one of the most infamous recruiting cases of the decade. Kelvin Sampson, hired after serving penalties at Oklahoma, landed in hot water again almost immediately. An internal review showed he and his staff made over 111 impermissible calls to recruits, including 3-way calls that let Sampson sneak into conversations despite being restricted. Most of the excess calls came from assistant Rob Senderoff, who didn't properly log contact and used his personal phones to sidestep compliance. By October 2007, Indiana had self-reported the violations, docked a scholarship for the upcoming season, and imposed recruiting limits. But that didn't stop the storm. In February 2008, the NCAA delivered its notice. 5 major violations, including misleading investigators. Sampson and his staff were accused of violating recruiting restrictions and ethical conduct rules. The pressure mounted fast, and Sampson resigned with a $750,000 buyout just 9 days later. In November, the NCAA handed down final penalties. Indiana got 3 years of probation, confirming the self-imposed sanctions. But the hammer fell on Sampson. He received a 5-year show cause penalty, practically blacklisting him from NCAA coaching until 2013. This wasn't just about phone calls. It was about ignoring restrictions already in place and then trying to dodge responsibility. The fallout derailed Sampson's career and bruised Indiana's reputation. The program had to rebuild under intense scrutiny, while the scandal became a textbook example of how fast violations, even ones that seem small, can spiral when compliance gets ignored and accountability breaks down. Kentucky scandal. In 1988, the Wildcats were slammed with one of the biggest scandals in college basketball history. It all started when an envelope stuffed with $1,000 in cash was found at an air freight facility addressed from a Kentucky assistant to the father of top recruit Chris Mills. The NCAA didn't need much more to launch a full investigation, and what they uncovered changed the program's trajectory. Mills was ruled ineligible, and Eric Manuel, another star player, got hit even harder. The NCAA found that Manuel's ACT score was suspiciously identical to another student's and labeled it academic fraud. he was banned from ever playing for any NCAA school again. Add in lies to investigators, and the picture only got worse. Assistant coach Dwayne Casey was accused of mailing the cash. The school was charged with multiple violations, and by March 1989, head coach Eddie Sutton and athletic director Cliff Hagan were both out. Kentucky's 13-19 season didn't help their case either. Then came the penalties. In May, the NCAA leveled 3 years of probation, a 2-year postseason ban, and banned live televised games for 1 season. Scholarships were slashed to 3 per year for 2 seasons, and wins from the 1988 tournament were vacated. The damage was deep. Kentucky had to rebuild its reputation from the ground up. Rick Pitino eventually took over, but the impact from this scandal lingered. From cash payments to academic fraud and institutional failure, this was a case that defined how far a program could fall and how long it took to climb back. The Wildcats dodged the so-called death penalty, but barely. What followed was years of recovery and compliance reform, just to steady the ship. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.